The neighborhood saw Ryan Miller leaving Emma Lawson's house at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Her husband had been dead exactly 9 days. By noon, 3 people had called Emma's mother-in-law. By evening, the man who'd only tried to help a grieving neighbor found himself at the center of whispered accusations he never saw coming. This is the story of how one act of kindness in the darkness became a scandal in the daylight, and how 2 broken people learned that healing doesn't wait for permission from those who've never known real loss. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Ryan Miller's alarm went off at 5:43 a.m., same as it did every weekday morning, 17 minutes before his daughter Macy typically wandered into his room asking if it was pancake day. It was never pancake day on Tuesdays. Tuesdays were scrambled eggs and toast. But she asked anyway, hopeful in that way only 6-year-olds could be, where yesterday's answer never quite stuck for tomorrow's question. He'd learned to set the alarm early, those 17 minutes a sacred buffer between sleep and the controlled chaos of single parenthood. 17 minutes to stand under hot water and pretend he was someone who got full nights of sleep. 17 minutes to drink coffee in silence before the question started, why is the sky blue? Where do squirrels sleep? Can we get a dog? Why not? You said maybe last time. The house was a small 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street, the kind of street where everyone mowed their lawn on Saturday mornings and brought their trash cans in before dark. Ryan had bought it 4 years ago, back when Macy was 2, and he was still trying to convince himself he knew what he was doing. The neighborhood was safe, the schools were good, and the mortgage was manageable if he didn't think too hard about it. He was 32 years old and had been a single father for all of Macy's conscious memory. Her mother, Jessica, had left when Macy was 18 months old, walked out on a Sunday afternoon with a packed suitcase and an apology Ryan still couldn't quite parse. She sent birthday cards twice a year, always postmarked from different cities, always with the same generic message, thinking of you, love always. Macy kept them in a shoebox under her bed, never asking why mommy's love always came from somewhere else. Ryan had stopped being angry about it somewhere around year 2. Anger took energy he didn't have, not when there were lunches to pack and parent-teacher conferences to attend, and a small person who needed him to have answers he was still figuring out himself. He worked as a freelance graphic designer, the kind of work that paid enough to keep the lights on if he stayed up late enough, took on enough projects, said yes more than he said no. His office was the dining room table after Macy went to bed. His colleagues were usernames in Slack channels. His commute was 20 feet in house slippers. It was a quiet life, a small life. Some days it felt like barely enough. Other days it felt like exactly what he'd needed all along. Macy appeared in the doorway at exactly 6:00 a.m., her dark hair sticking up in 3 different directions, her favorite stuffed elephant, creatively named Elephant, dragging behind her. Is it pancake day? She asked, rubbing one eye with her fist. It's Tuesday, Bug. What do we have on Tuesdays? She sighed dramatically, a gesture she'd learned from some kid at school and had been deploying with increasing frequency. Eggs. Eggs, Ryan confirmed, already pulling the carton from the fridge. But if you get dressed without me asking twice, I'll put cheese in them. And can I have the orange juice with the bits in it? The pulp? The bits. Yeah, you can have the bits. She disappeared back down the hallway, Elephant's trunk bouncing against the hardwood floor, and Ryan cracked 4 eggs into a bowl. 2 for her, 2 for him. He'd stopped eating breakfast for the first year after Jessica left, running on coffee and stress until his doctor told him his blood pressure was concerning for someone his age. Now he ate breakfast, drank water, took vitamins, did all the things people who wanted to stick around were supposed to do. Through the kitchen window, he could see Emma Lawson's house next door, a mirror image of his own, same colonial structure, same detached garage, same oak tree in the front yard. Different lives, though. Emma had a husband, a nice guy named David, who worked in finance and traveled frequently for work. They'd been married 8 years, no kids yet, but they talked about it sometimes. Emma mentioned it once while they were both watering their lawns on a July evening. Ryan had lived next to them for 4 years, and the relationship had settled into the comfortable rhythm of good neighbors. Waves across the driveway, help with a stuck garage door, borrowed cups of sugar that were never actually returned because neither party kept track. Emma baked, really baked, the kind of baking that filled the street with smells that made you homesick for a childhood you might not have even had. She'd bring over cookies, brownies, once an entire coffee cake that Macy declared the best thing she'd ever eaten. In return, Ryan shoveled her driveway when David was traveling and the snow came down heavy. He'd helped install her new mailbox last spring when someone had clipped the old one backing out too fast. Small things, neighbor things. Emma was 30, pretty in an understated way, light brown hair usually pulled back, quick smile, the kind of person who remembered your kid's name and asked about their spelling test. Ryan kept things friendly but distant, aware of the line between neighborly and something else. She was married. He was busy. Life was complicated enough without adding complications. Macy returned wearing mismatched socks and a shirt that was definitely pajama top, but Ryan had learned to pick his battles. If she was dressed and hadn't complained, that was a Tuesday morning victory. They ate breakfast at the small kitchen table, Macy narrating a complex drama involving two kids at school who both wanted to be line leader, a social crisis Ryan navigated with what he hoped were appropriately supportive responses. "Maybe you could take turns," he suggested. "That's what Mrs. Peterson said, but Emma Kay said that was stupid." Emma Kay sounds like she's working through some things. She picks her nose. Well, there you go. The morning routine continued, teeth brushed, shoes located, backpack checked for the homework that had been completed at the dining room table last night while Ryan fielded emails from a client in Seattle. The bus came at 7:23 and they waited at the end of the driveway together, Ryan in his jacket, Macy in her purple coat with the fake fur hood that she refused to give up even though it was getting too small. The bus rumbled up right on time, the door hissing open, and Macy climbed the stairs without looking back. She used to turn and wave every morning, but sometime in the last month she'd stopped, asserting independence in small ways that made Ryan's chest tight, even though he knew it was healthy, normal, exactly what was supposed to happen. He stood there until the bus turned at the end of the street, then walked back to the house that felt too quiet now, the kind of quiet that amplified the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of someone else's lawnmower. The dining room table was already set up, laptop open, sketchpad to the left, cold coffee from last night in a mug that said "World's Okayest Dad," a gift from his brother who thought he was hilarious. Ryan had 3 projects due this week: a logo redesign for a startup that kept changing their minds about their brand identity, a series of social media graphics for a lifestyle blogger, and a website mock-up for a restaurant that wanted something modern but also classic, you know? He didn't know, but he'd figure it out. He always did. The work was absorbing in the way work could be when you let it swallow whole hours. He looked up at one point and it was almost noon. His coffee had gone from cold to room temperature, and his neck hurt from hunching over the laptop. He stood, stretched, walked to the kitchen for water and something that resembled lunch. Through the window, he saw Emma pulling into her driveway, her car loaded with grocery bags. She got out, struggling with too many bags at once, that universal human instinct to make one trip instead of 2, even when physics disagreed. Ryan grabbed his keys without thinking about it too hard and walked outside. "Need a hand?" he called across the small strip of grass that separated their driveways. Emma looked up, her hair falling out of its ponytail, a bag slipping down her arm. "Oh my God, yes, I don't know why I do this to myself." Ryan jogged over and grabbed 4 bags from the trunk, the plastic handles already cutting into his palms. Emma took the remaining 3 and led the way to her front door, fumbling with keys while balancing grocery bags in a maneuver that required more coordination than it should. Inside, her house smelled like cinnamon and something baking, always something baking. The layout was identical to his, living room to the left, stairs straight ahead, kitchen at the back. But the feel was completely different. Where his house was functional and slightly cluttered with the debris of single parenthood, Emma's was warm, decorated with the kind of attention that came from actually caring about throw pillows and whether curtains matched. "Just set them on the counter," Emma said, already unloading her bags. "Thank you so much. David's out of town and I thought I could carry everything myself, which was clearly delusional." "Where's he this time?" Ryan asked, setting down the bags and stepping back, conscious of not overstaying. "Chicago, back Thursday." She pulled out a carton of milk, a bag of apples, a package of chicken. "How's Macy?" "She's good. Currently embroiled in some complex line leader politics at school." Emma laughed, the sound genuine. The real dramas always happen in elementary school. Apparently someone picks their nose, which I think is meant to be damning evidence of poor character. Devastating. They talked for a few more minutes, the easy conversation of people who'd had hundreds of these small exchanges. Nothing deep, but nothing forced either. Ryan mentioned the coffee cake. Emma promised to make more this weekend. They discussed the weather with the seriousness of people who had nothing else pressing to discuss. Ryan left after a few minutes, walking back across the small stretch of lawn to his own front door, back to the dining room table and the logo that still wasn't right, and the coffee that had somehow gone from room temperature to cold again. The afternoon dissolved into work, then the alarm he'd set so he wouldn't forget to meet Macy's bus, then the evening routine. Snack, homework, math worksheet and reading log. Playtime, elaborate game involving elephant and several other stuffed animals Ryan had to voice. Dinner, chicken nuggets and broccoli that went largely ignored. Bath, stories, songs, the gradual dimming of energy until Macy's eyes were heavy and her questions came slower. "Dad?" she asked, her voice sleep-soft. "Yeah? Bug? Is Miss Emma sad?" Ryan paused, his hand on her back. "What makes you think she's sad?" "She smiled different today when I saw her outside, like how you smile when you say you're fine, but you're not really fine." 6 years old and already reading people better than most adults. Ryan smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Maybe she's just tired. Sometimes grown-ups get tired." "You're always tired." "That's because you wake me up asking about pancakes." She giggled, the sound muffled against her pillow. "It could be pancake day if you wanted." "Go to sleep." "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, Bug." He stayed until her breathing evened out, then crept from the room with practiced silence, pulling the door almost closed the way she liked it, leaving the hallway light on because total darkness still scared her sometimes. Downstairs, the dining room table waited with 3 more hours of work if he wanted to stay on schedule. Ryan made fresh coffee, opened his laptop, and tried to focus on kerning and color theory and whether the logo needed to be more modern or more classic or some impossible combination of both. But Macy's question lingered. "Is Miss Emma sad?" He hadn't noticed anything different, but then again, he'd been focused on grocery bags and making small talk, not on reading emotional subtext. Emma had seemed fine. Tired maybe, but fine. The week continued in its familiar rhythm. Mornings with Macy, days at the dining room table, evenings that blurred together in a parade of homework and dinner and bedtime negotiations. Ryan saw Emma a few times in passing, once while checking the mail, once when they both happened to take out trash at the same time, and she seemed normal. Smiled, waved, asked about Macy's school play coming up next month. Friday afternoon, Ryan finished the logo redesign. The client would probably ask for changes anyway, they always did, and decided to take Macy to the park, a rare break from the routine. They spent an hour at the playground, Macy making friends with 3 other kids in the span of minutes. That easy childhood ability to turn strangers into playmates with nothing more than proximity and a shared interest in the swings. Ryan sat on a bench, half watching Macy, half scrolling through emails on his phone, when he saw David Lawson's car pull into the driveway across the street from the park. David got out, reached into the back seat for his carry-on bag, walked toward the front door. Emma must have been watching for him because the door opened before he reached it. And even from this distance, Ryan could see the way she moved toward her husband, the way David dropped his bag and wrapped his arms around her, the way they stood there in the doorway for a long moment. Ryan looked away, back to Macy, who was now hanging upside down from the monkey bars, her face red with effort and joy. The weekend passed. Saturday morning lawn mowing, Saturday afternoon client work while Macy watched movies, Saturday evening pizza and a board game that Macy won through a combination of luck and what Ryan suspected was gentle cheating. Sunday was laundry, grocery shopping, meal prep for the week ahead, the maintenance tasks that kept life running smoothly. Sunday evening, after Macy was in bed, Ryan stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes and saw the ambulance pull up to Emma's house. No sirens, but the lights were spinning, red and white against the dark street. and Ryan's hands went still in the soapy water. The paramedics moved quickly, but not frantically, and that somehow felt worse. The kind of speed that suggested urgency, but not hope. Ryan dried his hands and stepped onto the front porch, cold October air hitting his face. Two other neighbors were already outside. The Petersons from 3 houses down, Marcus Chen from across the street. They stood in their yards, watching, that universal human instinct to witness tragedy from a safe distance. The paramedics brought a stretcher out, a white sheet covering the shape on it, and Ryan's stomach dropped. Not covering a person, covering a body. There was a difference in how the sheet lay, how the paramedics moved, the absence of urgency. Emma walked out after them, moving like someone not fully in their body. Her mother was with her. Ryan recognized the older woman from the few times she'd visited, one arm around Emma's shoulders, guiding her toward a car. Ryan started across the lawn without thinking about it, but Marcus was already there talking to one of the paramedics, and by the time Ryan got close enough to hear, the paramedic was shaking his head. "Massive heart attack," Marcus said quietly as Ryan approached. "David, he was only 35. The words didn't land right. Ryan heard them but couldn't quite process them into meaning. David, who'd been alive on Friday, who'd come home from Chicago, who'd hugged his wife in the doorway while Ryan sat on a park bench watching his daughter play. "When?" Ryan asked. "This evening. Emma found him." Marcus's voice was rough. "She called 911, but he was already gone." The ambulance pulled away without sirens. Emma's mother drove her in the opposite direction. Within 20 minutes, the street was empty again. The only evidence anything had happened was the neighbors still standing in their yards, talking in low voices, trying to make sense of sudden death on a Sunday evening. Ryan walked back to his house and stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the dishes he hadn't finished washing. Through the window, Emma's house was dark except for one light upstairs, probably on a timer. The kind of house that looked normal from the outside, that would look normal tomorrow morning when people drove past on their way to work. But inside that house, everything had just shattered. Ryan finished the dishes because he didn't know what else to do. He checked on Macy, who was sleeping with Elephant tucked under one arm, completely unaware that the world had shifted. He went back downstairs and tried to work but couldn't focus, the cursor blinking on a blank screen while his mind replayed the covered stretcher, Emma's absent expression, the efficiency of death. He'd met David dozens of times over 4 years. They'd talked about weather and sports and lawn care, those surface conversations men had when they were friendly but not friends. David had helped Ryan install a new doorbell last year. Ryan had given David advice on where to buy decent patio furniture, normal neighbor interactions that seemed impossibly trivial now. Ryan went to bed late and lay awake in the dark, listening to the house settle, thinking about how fast everything could change, how you could be alive on Friday, coming home from a business trip, hugging your wife, making plans for the week ahead, and then gone by Sunday, reduced to a shape under a white sheet. He thought about Emma, about the empty house next door, about the specific loneliness of losing someone in the space where you built a life together. He thought about Macy, asleep down the hall, and the weight of being the only parent, the only person standing between a small child and the world's sharp edges. Eventually, he slept. Monday morning arrived too early. Macy asked about pancakes. Ryan made eggs. They went through the routine with a normalcy that felt obscene given what had happened next door. He didn't tell Macy. She was 6. She'd met David maybe twice. She didn't need the weight of death before breakfast. At the bus stop, Sarah Peterson approached with her daughter. "Terrible about David," she said quietly, glancing toward Emma's dark house. "Emma's staying with her mother for a few days. The funeral is Thursday." Ryan nodded, filed the information away, watched Macy board the bus without waving. The week moved forward because that's what weeks did, indifferent to grief. Ryan worked, met deadlines, picked up Macy from the bus, made dinner, gave baths, told stories. Other neighbors left casseroles and flowers on Emma's porch, gestures that would spoil or die before she came home to see them. Thursday was the funeral. Ryan's brother came to watch Macy, and Ryan put on the one suit he owned and drove to the church across town. The parking lot was full. David had been well-liked, successful, the kind of person who collected acquaintances easily. Inside, the service was tasteful and brief. Emma sat in the front row between her mother and David's parents, her face composed in that way that suggested heavy medication or complete dissociation. People spoke about David's life, his career, his kindness, his love for his wife, and Ryan sat in the back and felt like an intruder, someone who'd known David only in the most superficial sense. At the reception afterward, Ryan paid his respects to Emma, standing in line for 15 minutes to reach her, watching her accept condolences with mechanical grace. "I'm so sorry," he said when it was his turn, the words inadequate but necessary. Emma looked at him, and for a moment there was recognition, a flicker of something beyond the fog. "Ryan, thank you for coming. If you need anything," he started, but someone else was already moving into position behind him, and Emma's attention shifted, and Ryan stepped away feeling like he'd said nothing of value. He drove home, relieved his brother when he arrived, changed out of the suit he'd probably wear next at his own funeral, and tried to focus on the evening routine. Macy wanted to know where he'd been, why he was dressed fancy, and Ryan gave her a simplified version. "Mr. David from next door died, and I went to say goodbye." "Like when Grandpa died?" Macy asked. "Yeah, kind of like that." "Is Miss Emma sad?" "Yeah, Bug. She's very sad." Macy processed this, her small face serious. "We should make her cookies. Maybe in a few days. Right now she needs some quiet time." But Macy's instinct was right, Ryan thought later. Cookies wouldn't fix anything, but they were something. A gesture. Proof that someone was thinking about you, even if thinking didn't change the facts. The weekend came. Emma's car returned to the driveway Saturday afternoon, and Ryan watched from his kitchen window as she got out alone, carrying a small bag, walking into the house that was hers now in a different way than it had been a week ago. The neighborhood had already mostly moved on. Life demanded attention, jobs and kids and bills and all the noise of living. David's death was terrible, tragic, impossibly sad, but it was also someone else's tragedy, something to discuss in lowered voices before returning to your own concerns. Ryan found himself thinking about Emma at odd moments. While washing dishes, he'd glance at her house and wonder if she was eating. While putting Macy to bed, he'd hear sounds from next door, a door closing, a car starting, and wonder if she was okay alone in that space filled with absence. Sunday evening, he made a lasagna. It was one of the few dishes he could make well, something his mother had taught him years ago, the recipe written in her handwriting on a card he kept in a drawer. He made too much, always made too much, and stood looking at it cooling on the stove, thinking about the casseroles rotting on Emma's porch, thinking about the specific loneliness of eating alone. He covered half the lasagna, left the other half for tomorrow's dinner, and before he could talk himself out of it, walked across the lawn to Emma's front door. He knocked quietly, aware it was almost 8, aware he might be intruding, aware this might be unwelcome. 30 seconds passed. He was about to turn away when the door opened. Emma stood there in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair pulled back, no makeup, eyes red-rimmed. She looked younger without the composed mask she'd worn at the funeral, and more fragile, like a person barely held together by routine. "Ryan," she said, surprised. "Hey, I made too much lasagna and thought—" He held up the covered dish, suddenly feeling ridiculous. "I can leave it and go. I just wanted to make sure you had something—" "Come in," Emma said, stepping back, and there was something in her voice that made it clear this wasn't politeness, but need. Ryan followed her inside. The house was too warm, the heat turned up despite the mild October evening. Emma led him to the kitchen, took the lasagna, set it on the counter without really looking at it. "Thank you," she said. "People keep bringing food and I keep not eating it." "You should eat." "I know." She leaned against the counter, her arms wrapped around herself. "I keep thinking I'll get hungry, and then I'm just not." Ryan stood awkwardly in her kitchen, unsure of the protocol here. Leave? Stay? Offer platitudes he didn't believe? "Everyone says it gets easier," Emma said suddenly, her voice hollow. "That time heals. That I'm young, I'll move forward. They say these things like they're helpful, and all I can think is that they don't know. They don't know what it's like to wake up and forget for 3 seconds, and then remember and have to feel it crash over you again." "No," Ryan agreed quietly. "They don't know." Emma looked at him, really looked at him. "But you do." It wasn't quite true. Jessica had left, she hadn't died, and those were different griefs entirely. But the loneliness, the empty house, the weight of being the only one responsible for your own survival, that he understood. Different circumstances, Ryan said. But yeah, some of it. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that felt less empty than most conversation. Would you? Emma started, then stopped. Started again. This is going to sound crazy, but would you just sit with me for a bit? Not talk, just be here? The house is too quiet and I can't stand it, but I also can't stand more people telling me how sorry they are. Ryan should have said no. Should have made an excuse about Macy, about work, about the late hour. Should have maintained the careful distance of good neighbors. Instead, he said, okay. They moved to the living room. Emma curled into the corner of the couch, pulling a blanket over her legs. Ryan sat in the armchair across from her, careful to maintain space, aware this was a kindness but also a risk, a blurring of lines. Emma turned on the television, some cooking show playing at low volume, and they sat in the semi-dark watching strangers make complicated desserts. They didn't talk. Emma cried quietly at one point, wiping tears with the blanket edge, and Ryan pretended not to notice because sometimes the kindest thing was to let someone fall apart without an audience. An hour passed, then another. Ryan checked his phone once, a text from his brother asking how he was holding up. He replied he was fine, which was mostly true. At some point, Emma's breathing evened out, and Ryan realized she'd fallen asleep, her head against the arm of the couch, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been while awake. He should leave, should go home, check on Macy, return to his own life. But Emma had asked him to stay, and she looked peaceful for the first time since he'd knocked on her door, and Ryan found himself unwilling to risk waking her. He settled deeper into the armchair, pulled out his phone, and answered emails in the quiet house while Emma slept. Midnight came and went. The cooking show ended, replaced by another, then another. Ryan's neck started to hurt from the angle of the chair, but he didn't move. At some point near 2 a.m., exhaustion won and his eyes closed. He woke to early morning light and the sound of a car door closing. Ryan sat up too fast, his neck screaming in protest, momentarily disoriented. Emma's living room. Emma still asleep on the couch, sunlight streaming through windows he should have left hours ago. The front door opened without a knock, and a woman walked in, older, put together even at this early hour, her face already hardening as she took in the scene. Emma asleep on the couch, Ryan standing up from the armchair, rumpled and clearly having been there all night. Emma's mother-in-law. Ryan recognized her from the funeral. What's going on here? The question was quiet but sharp, her eyes moving from Ryan to Emma to the scene that, Ryan suddenly realized, looked exactly like what it wasn't. Emma stirred, opening her eyes, confusion giving way to awareness, and then something that looked like fear. Margaret, Emma said, sitting up quickly. I didn't know you were coming. Clearly. Margaret's voice could have cut glass. Mr. Miller, isn't it? From next door? Yes, ma'am. I was just... Ryan started, but what could he say? I was just being here while your daughter-in-law slept. I stayed because she asked me to? I think you should go, Margaret said, and it wasn't a suggestion. Ryan looked at Emma, who had pulled the blanket tighter around herself, who looked small and caught and utterly mortified. Emma, he tried. It's fine, Emma said quickly, not meeting his eyes. Thank you for... I'm fine. You should go. Ryan grabbed his phone from the armchair, walked to the front door with Margaret's eyes burning into his back, stepped out into a morning that felt too bright, too ordinary for what had just shifted. Behind him he heard Margaret's voice, controlled but furious. Emma Catherine, what were you thinking? The door closed, cutting off whatever Emma said in response. Ryan walked across the lawn to his own house, his own door, his own life that he should have stayed in. Inside, everything was quiet. Macy still asleep, the morning routine not yet started, time still existing in that suspended space between night and day. He stood in his kitchen and looked at Emma's house and knew with absolute certainty that something had just broken that couldn't be easily fixed. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. Please don't come over anymore. I'm sorry. Emma Ryan stared at the message for a long time, then set his phone down on the counter and went upstairs to wake his daughter for school. Pancakes or eggs? The choice that started every Tuesday. Except this Tuesday felt like the end of something rather than a beginning, and Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that his attempt at kindness had somehow made everything worse. The Tuesday morning routine happened on autopilot. Ryan made pancakes because he couldn't bring himself to care about the schedule, and Macy was too delighted by the unexpected victory to question it. She chattered about something that happened at school yesterday while he flipped batter and tried not to look out the window at Emma's house, where the curtains were now drawn tight against the morning sun. The text message sat in his phone like a small bomb. Please don't come over anymore. I'm sorry. Emma. He'd read it maybe 30 times since it arrived, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less final. They never did. Macy left for school with syrup still sticky on her chin despite his best efforts with a napkin, and Ryan returned to the house that felt different now, like he'd carried something toxic back across the lawn and it had contaminated everything. He tried to work but couldn't focus, the cursor blinking mockingly on the screen while his mind replayed the moment Margaret walked in, the look on Emma's face, the speed with which everything had turned. He'd been trying to help. That was the worst part. He genuinely, stupidly thought he was doing the right thing by staying, by being a presence in that too-quiet house while Emma slept. Instead, he'd created exactly the kind of situation that would feed neighborhood gossip for months. Around 11, he saw Margaret leave Emma's house, her car backing out of the driveway with precision that somehow felt aggressive. Emma's car stayed put. The curtains stayed closed. Ryan forced himself to focus on work, accepting the distraction of a client who wanted 17 revisions to a logo that had been perfect 3 versions ago. He answered emails, adjusted color palettes, pretended the world hadn't tilted sideways. Wednesday came and went. Thursday, Friday. The weekend stretched out in its familiar pattern of Macy-focused activities and client deadlines and household maintenance, all of it happening against the backdrop of Emma's house next door, which remained dark and closed, a presence through absence. He saw her once, on Saturday morning, getting into her car early. She looked straight ahead, didn't wave, drove away before he could decide if he should try to catch her attention. When she returned 2 hours later with grocery bags, she parked in the garage and entered through the side door, never emerging into visible range. The message was clear: stay away. Ryan tried to respect it, tried to focus on his own life, his own daughter, his own work. But he found himself watching her house at odd moments, looking for signs of life beyond the single light that came on each evening upstairs, probably still on a timer from when David was alive. Macy noticed before he did. "Why doesn't Miss Emma wave anymore?" she asked on Sunday afternoon, looking up from her coloring book. "She's going through a hard time, Bug. Remember we talked about Mr. David dying?" "Yeah, but you said we should be nice to people who are sad." "We should, but sometimes people need space to be sad by themselves." Macy considered this with the seriousness she brought to important matters. "That sounds lonely." "Yeah," Ryan agreed quietly. "It does." Monday morning brought a new text, this one from Sarah Peterson. "Coffee this week? I wanted to talk to you about something." Ryan knew exactly what Sarah wanted to talk about. The neighborhood had eyes, and those eyes had definitely noticed Ryan leaving Emma's house early Tuesday morning. He texted back a polite agreement to meet Thursday, already dreading the conversation. Work consumed Tuesday and Wednesday in a blur of deadlines and client calls, and Macy's increasingly complex homework assignments. First grade was apparently when they started taking math seriously, and Ryan found himself watching YouTube videos about number bonds at 10 p.m., trying to understand the new way they taught addition so he could help his daughter. Thursday morning, he met Sarah at the coffee shop on Main Street, a place that tried too hard to be trendy with its exposed brick and Edison bulbs. Sarah was already there when he arrived, 2 cups on the table, her expression carefully neutral. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as Ryan sat down. "Of course. What's up?" Sarah took a sip of her coffee, clearly organizing her thoughts. "I'm going to be direct because I think that's kindest. There's been some talk in the neighborhood about you and Emma." Ryan's stomach tightened. "What kind of talk?" "The kind that happens when a man is seen leaving a widow's house at 6 in the morning." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. I know you, Ryan. I know you wouldn't do anything inappropriate, but appearances matter, especially now when Emma is vulnerable. Nothing happened, Ryan said, hearing the defensive edge in his voice and hating it. She asked me to stay because the house felt too empty. I fell asleep in a chair. That's it. I believe you. Sarah reached across the table, her hand hovering near his. But Margaret doesn't, and she's been calling people, asking questions about you, making it clear she thinks Emma needs protection from, well, from you. Protection from me bringing her lasagna? Protection from a single man taking advantage of her grief. The words landed like a physical blow. Ryan sat back, his coffee untouched. That's what she thinks? That I'm some kind of predator? She's protective. She just lost her son. She's looking for someone to blame, something to control. Sarah's voice was sympathetic, but her eyes were serious. I'm telling you this as a friend. Give Emma space. Real space. Don't bring food, don't offer help, don't try to reach out. Let her heal without complications. I've been giving her space. She asked me to stay away, and I have. Good. Keep doing that. Sarah finally pulled her hand back, wrapped it around her coffee cup. I know it seems harsh, but Emma's going through something impossible right now. The last thing she needs is her dead husband's mother thinking there's something inappropriate happening next door. Ryan wanted to argue, to defend himself against accusations he shouldn't have to defend against. But Sarah was right. Margaret's opinion mattered, fair or not, and Ryan's presence in Emma's life, however innocent, had become a problem. Okay, he said finally. I'll stay away. Thank you. Sarah's relief was visible. For what it's worth, I think you were trying to do something kind, but timing matters, and right now the timing is terrible. They finished their coffee, making small talk about their kids, about the upcoming school carnival, about the weather turning colder. Normal conversation that felt hollow after what had been said, but necessary to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. Ryan drove home feeling like he'd been reprimanded for a crime he didn't commit, which wasn't entirely wrong. The court of neighborhood opinion had deliberated and found him guilty of poor judgment, and the sentence was exile from a friendship that had barely begun. The rest of October passed in a gray blur. The leaves turned, fell, crunched under tires and feet. Halloween came and went with Ryan walking Macy door to door dressed as a butterfly while she collected candy from neighbors who smiled at him normally, no hint of judgment in their faces. Maybe Sarah's warning had been overstated. Maybe the gossip had died down, or maybe people were just good at pretending everything was fine. Emma's house remained a closed book. Her car came and went at irregular times. Once Ryan saw her carrying in what looked like mail that had accumulated. Another time he glimpsed her through the window talking on the phone, pacing. But they never made eye contact, never acknowledged each other's existence despite living 20 feet apart. November brought early snow, unexpected and heavy, 6 inches overnight that transformed the neighborhood into something pristine and temporary. Ryan woke early to shovel his driveway before Macy's bus arrived, the physical work a welcome distraction from the thoughts that had been circling his head for weeks. He was halfway down his driveway when he looked over at Emma's house and saw her standing at the front door, staring at her own driveway buried under snow. She was wearing the same sweatpants and oversized shirt she'd had on that morning Margaret walked in, and Ryan realized with a jolt that David had always been the one to shovel. Emma looked at the snow, then at the shovel hanging in her garage, then back at the snow. Her shoulders sagged in a way that suggested this was one more thing she didn't have the energy to face. Ryan made a decision. He walked across the property line, his shovel scraping against the snow, and started on her driveway without asking permission or making eye contact. Ryan, you don't have to, Emma started, but her voice cracked and she stopped. I know, he said, not looking up, just shoveling. I'm doing it anyway. He expected her to argue, to remind him of her text message, to tell him Sarah's warning had been right. Instead, she stood there silently, and when he finally glanced up, she was crying, tears running down her face while she hugged herself against the cold. Go inside, Ryan said gently. You'll freeze. Emma shook her head but didn't move, and Ryan kept shoveling, the scrape of metal on concrete the only sound in the early morning quiet. It took him 20 minutes to clear her driveway, and when he finished, Emma was still standing there. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're welcome. They looked at each other across the cleared driveway, and Ryan saw something in her face. Exhaustion, gratitude, shame, all mixed together in a way that made his chest ache. Margaret thinks, Emma started. I know what she thinks. Sarah told me. I tried to explain, but she won't listen. She thinks I'm... Emma trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Moving on too fast, Ryan supplied, dishonoring David's memory, being inappropriate with the neighbor. All of that. Emma wrapped her arms tighter around herself. She threatened to contest the will, to make things difficult with David's life insurance. Said I was already replacing him before he was cold in the ground. The cruelty of it hit Ryan like a fist. Emma, so I can't... Her voice broke again. I can't be your friend right now. I can't accept your help or your kindness or anything because she's watching, and I can't afford to lose everything on top of losing him. Ryan understood. He didn't like it, thought it was fundamentally unfair, but he understood. Okay. I'm sorry. Don't be. You're doing what you need to do. Emma nodded, wiping at her face with cold fingers. But thank you for the driveway, for that night when you stayed, for trying. Any time, Ryan said, even though they both knew there wouldn't be a next time. Emma went inside. Ryan walked back to his own driveway and finished clearing it, then got Macy ready for school, maintaining the routine that had become his anchor in a world that kept shifting under his feet. The snow lasted 3 days before melting into gray slush. Ryan watched from his window as Emma struggled to get her car out of the garage, the door frozen shut from ice. He forced himself to stay inside, to not run over with a de-icer and a scraper, to respect the distance she'd asked for. After 10 minutes of Emma pulling on the door, Marcus Chen walked over from across the street and helped her get it open. She thanked him, drove away, and Ryan felt the sharp edge of his own uselessness. Thanksgiving approached with its mandatory cheerfulness. Ryan's brother invited them to drive upstate for dinner with his family, and Ryan accepted gratefully, needing the escape from the house next door and the woman he couldn't help. They left Wednesday afternoon, Macy excited about seeing her cousins, Ryan relieved to put physical distance between himself and the situation he'd somehow become entangled in. His brother's house was warm and chaotic, filled with kids and noise and the smell of things cooking, everything Ryan's house usually wasn't. You seem distracted, his brother Tom said late Wednesday night, after the kids were asleep and they were sitting in the kitchen with beers. Just tired. Just tired, or Emma Lawson tired? Ryan looked up sharply. How do you... Sarah Peterson called Linda. Tom's wife, Linda, was Sarah's college roommate, of course. Said there was some drama with you being seen at the widow's house early morning. Nothing happened. I know that. You're not exactly the type to move in on a grieving widow. Tom took a drink. But appearances matter in suburbia. You know that. Yeah, I'm learning that real fast. So what are you going to do? Nothing. Stay away like I've been told to. Let her deal with her grief without me complicating things. Tom studied him for a moment. You like her? I barely know her. That's not what I asked. Ryan sighed, rotating the beer bottle in his hands. She was kind to Macy. She baked cookies and remembered Macy's birthday and asked about school plays. And when David died, she looked so lost, and I thought... He stopped, searching for words. I thought I could help. Thought I understood what it was like to be alone in a house that's supposed to be for 2 people. And now? Now I'm the neighbor she can't talk to because her dead husband's mother thinks I'm trying to take advantage. That's rough. Yeah. They sat in silence for a while, the house settling around them, the kind of comfortable quiet that came from years of brotherhood. For what it's worth, Tom said finally, I think you did the right thing. Maybe the timing was bad, maybe you should have left before morning, but trying to help someone who's hurting, that's not wrong. Doesn't matter if it was right. It matters what it looks like. Since when do you care what things look like? Ryan laughed, the sound bitter. Since I realized that what things look like can hurt someone I care about. Tom raised his beer. To suburban politics. May they burn in hell. I'll drink to that. Thanksgiving Day was a welcome distraction of food and football, and Macy playing with her cousins until she collapsed into sleep on the couch at 7 p.m. Ryan helped clean up, made small talk with Tom's in-laws, participated in the machinery of family holiday without really being present. He checked his phone once and saw Emma had posted on social media for the first time since David died. A simple photo of a pie with the caption, "Trying." 47 comments offering support, encouragement, prayers. Ryan didn't comment, didn't react, just looked at the photo and felt the distance between them like a physical thing. They drove home Friday afternoon, Macy sleeping in the back seat, the landscape gray and cold under November skies. When they pulled into the driveway, Emma's car was gone, her house dark. Ryan carried a sleeping Macy inside, put her to bed still in her clothes, and stood at his kitchen window looking at the empty driveway next door. The weekend was quiet. Saturday morning, he saw Emma return with groceries, watched her carry them inside alone, wanted to help, and didn't. Sunday it rained, cold and relentless, and Ryan worked on a project while Macy built elaborate Lego structures on the living room floor. Monday brought a new week, new deadlines, the same routine. Macy's bus, work, emails, meetings, the careful choreography of single parenthood and freelance work. Ryan fell into it gratefully, letting the demands of his life consume the hours. But at night, after Macy was asleep and the work was done, he'd stand at the kitchen window and see Emma's house with its single light upstairs, and he'd wonder if she was okay, if she was eating, if the house still felt too empty, if she ever thought about the night he stayed, about the kindness that had turned complicated. December arrived with more snow and the relentless machinery of the holiday season. Macy's school had a winter concert, a holiday party, a gift exchange that required Ryan to buy something gender-neutral under $15 for a classmate he'd never heard of. He navigated it all while trying to stay focused on work, on deadlines that didn't care about seasonal chaos. He saw Emma occasionally in passing, getting her mail, warming up her car, once sitting in the driveway in the driver's seat. Without moving for so long, Ryan almost knocked on her window before she finally started the engine and drove away. They never spoke, never waved, existed in parallel universes separated by 20 feet and a gulf of misunderstanding. One Wednesday evening in mid-December, Ryan was putting out the trash when he saw Emma doing the same. They both stopped, caught in the awkward dance of trying to ignore each other while performing the same mundane task. Emma spoke first. "How's Macy?" The question was so normal, so reminiscent of their old easy conversations, that Ryan felt something crack in his chest. "She's good. Excited about Christmas. Already changed her mind about what she wants from Santa 3 times. That sounds about right for 6. Emma smiled, the expression small and sad. "Tell her I said hi." "I will." They stood there for a moment, the cold biting at exposed skin, their breath visible in the air between them. "I miss talking to you," Emma said suddenly. "I know I can't. I know it's complicated, but I miss it. You were the only person who didn't treat me like I was made of glass." "I miss it too. Margaret's supposed to visit for Christmas. She wants to make sure I'm not—" Emma stopped, shook her head. "Never mind. It doesn't matter." "It does matter. All of it matters." "But it doesn't change anything." Emma pulled her coat tighter around herself. "I should go in. It's cold." "Emma." "Good night, Ryan." She walked back to her house, and Ryan stood by his trash cans watching her go, feeling the weight of all the things he couldn't say, couldn't do, couldn't fix. Christmas approached with its forced cheer and impossible expectations. Ryan bought presents he couldn't quite afford, decorated a tree that Macy declared the best one they'd ever had, made cookies using a recipe he found online that came out slightly burned but edible. On Christmas Eve, after Macy was asleep, Ryan stood at the window and saw Emma's house completely dark for the first time. No timer light upstairs, no glow from the television, nothing. He told himself she was probably asleep, told himself it was none of his business, told himself to respect the boundaries that had been set. But at midnight, when she still hadn't turned on a single light, Ryan made a decision that was probably stupid but felt necessary. He walked across the lawn and knocked softly on her door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. The door opened. Emma stood there in darkness, her face barely visible, and Ryan knew immediately that something was wrong. "What do you want?" Her voice was flat, empty in a way that scared him. "Your lights are all off. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine." "Emma," I said, "I'm fine. Go home, Ryan. Go be with your daughter. Leave me alone." She started to close the door, but Ryan put his hand against it, not forcing it, but not letting it close either. "Tell me one true thing, right now. Are you okay?" Emma's breath caught, and in the darkness he heard her start to cry. "No, I'm not okay. Today was supposed to be our first Christmas in this house, and instead I'm alone and everyone keeps telling me it gets better, but it doesn't. It doesn't get better. It just gets different, and I don't know how to do this." Ryan stepped inside without asking permission, closing the door behind him. Emma was already walking away toward the living room, her shoulders shaking. He followed her into the darkness, guided by sound. "I can't turn the lights on," Emma said from somewhere ahead. "If I turn the lights on, I'll see all the things we bought together, all the things he touched, all the proof that he was here and now he's not, and I can't." "Okay." Ryan stayed still, letting his eyes adjust. "Then we stay in the dark." "You should go. If someone sees, it's midnight on Christmas Eve. No one's looking." Emma laughed, the sound broken. "You don't know Margaret. She probably has cameras. Then let her watch. I don't care anymore." He heard Emma sink onto the couch, heard her crying in the darkness, and Ryan moved carefully until he found the armchair from that first night, sinking into it with the strange familiarity of returning to a place he'd only been once. "I keep thinking about that night you stayed," Emma said after a while. "Before Margaret came. I slept for the first time since David died. Really slept. And then I woke up and everything was wrong and I felt so guilty." "Guilty for sleeping?" "Guilty for feeling safe with you there. Guilty for not wanting you to leave. Guilty for thinking about you at all when I should be thinking about my dead husband." Her voice cracked on the last words. Ryan sat forward, his elbows on his knees. "Grief isn't betrayal, Emma. Accepting help isn't moving on. You're allowed to need people." "Margaret doesn't think so. Margaret is operating from her own pain. She lost her son. She's trying to control what she can control, and that means controlling you. She threatened to tell people we were having an affair, that David's death was convenient for us." Emma's voice was bitter. "Can you imagine? David had a heart attack at 35, and somehow that's part of my grand plan to be with the neighbor." Ryan felt rage on her behalf, hot and sharp. "That's insane. That's grief. Everyone's looking for someone to blame, something to make sense. And I'm the easiest target because I'm still here and he's not." They sat in the darkness, two people trying to navigate impossible situations with no map. "I brought you something," Ryan said finally. "It's Christmas Eve and I made cookies with Macy, and they're kind of burned, but they're edible. And I thought—" He stopped. "I thought you shouldn't be alone tonight." He heard Emma move, felt her presence closer, though he couldn't see her. "You brought me cookies." "Yeah. After I told you to stay away. After Sarah warned you. After all of this mess." "Yeah." Emma's hand found his in the darkness, her fingers cold. "You're either very kind or very stupid." "Probably both." She laughed, really laughed, and the sound was like light in the darkness. "Stay, please, just for tonight. I can't do Christmas alone." So Ryan stayed, sitting in Emma's dark living room on Christmas Eve, while the neighborhood slept and Macy slept and the world turned indifferent to the small kindness of presence. They talked in the darkness about everything and nothing, about David, about Jessica, about the impossible weight of being the one left behind. Emma told him about the good parts of her marriage and the hard parts, about plans they'd made that would never happen, about the specific loneliness of sleeping in a bed meant for two. Ryan told her about the first year after Jessica left, about learning to braid hair from YouTube videos, about the fear that he was fundamentally failing at being both mother and father. "You're a good dad," Emma said. "Macy's lucky. She deserves more than one parent doing his best." "Maybe. But his best is pretty damn good." Around 3 a.m., Emma fell asleep on the couch, her breathing evening out in the darkness. Ryan stayed awake this time, determined not to repeat the mistake of being there when morning came. At 4:30, he stood carefully, found a blanket on the back of the couch and covered Emma with it, then let himself out the front door into the cold Christmas morning. The street was empty, silent, no witnesses to his exit. Ryan walked across the frozen grass to his own door, his own house, his own life that was waiting for him. Inside, he checked on Macy, still asleep, elephant tucked under her arm, then went to his own bed and lay awake watching the ceiling, thinking about Emma alone in that dark house, about the boundaries he kept crossing despite knowing better, about the impossibility of staying away from someone who needed help, even when helping made everything more complicated. Christmas morning arrived with Macy's excited shriek at 6 a.m., and Ryan dragged himself downstairs to watch her tear into presents with the single-minded focus only children possessed. They had pancakes because it was Christmas, and rules didn't apply, and Ryan tried to be present for his daughter while his mind kept drifting to the house next door. Around noon, he saw Emma's car leave the driveway. She was gone for hours, returning after dark with what looked like takeout bags. The lights stayed off. Ryan spent the rest of Christmas trying not to look out the window, trying to focus on Macy's joy, and not think about Emma eating Chinese food alone in the dark. The week between Christmas and New Year's stretched out in a weird, suspended time where nothing felt real. Ryan worked half-heartedly, Macy watched too much television, and Emma's house remained a dark monument to grief next door. On New Year's Eve, Ryan put Macy to bed early and sat at his kitchen table with a beer, watching the minutes count down to a year that would mark 12 months since David died, 12 months since Emma's life changed, 12 months since Ryan had known any of this would happen. At 11:47 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Thank you for Christmas Eve. I needed that more than you know." Ryan stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He could say "you're welcome," could keep it simple and friendly and distant. Instead he typed, "Anytime, I mean it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I know, that's what makes it so hard." The new year arrived with distant fireworks and neighbors setting off celebratory noises, and Ryan sat alone at his kitchen table thinking about the woman next door and the impossible space between helping and hurting, between kindness and complication, between staying away and showing up when someone needed you most. January came in cold and unforgiving, the kind of winter that settled into your bones and stayed there. Ryan watched the calendar flip over with a sense of resignation, knowing that the new year wouldn't magically solve anything, wouldn't make Emma's grief lighter, or Margaret's suspicions disappear, or the neighborhood gossip fade away. The first week passed in silence. Emma's car came and went at odd hours. Ryan caught glimpses of her through windows, moving through rooms, carrying laundry, living a life he was no longer part of, even in the peripheral way he'd once been. Macy went back to school with stories about what Santa brought her classmates, and Ryan returned to the dining room table and the endless cycle of client revisions and invoices and emails that all seemed to say the same thing in different words. On January 7th, Ryan was working late when headlights swept across his window. He looked up to see an unfamiliar car pull into Emma's driveway, a sleek black sedan that screamed rental. Margaret emerged from the driver's side, and even from this distance, Ryan could read the tension in her movements. She let herself into Emma's house with a key, didn't knock, and Ryan felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't a casual visit. This was an ambush. He told himself it wasn't his business, told himself to look away, get back to work, stop monitoring Emma's life like some obsessed neighbor. But 45 minutes later, when Margaret's voice carried through the winter night loud enough that Ryan could hear it from inside his own house, he couldn't pretend anymore. "You're making a fool of yourself," Margaret's voice cut through the quiet street. "David's barely cold and you're already—" Ryan couldn't hear Emma's response, but he heard Margaret's laugh, sharp and cruel. "Don't lie to me. I know he was here Christmas Eve. The Chen boy saw his car in your driveway at 4 in the morning. Ryan's blood went cold. Marcus Chen's teenage son, home from college for the holidays. Of course. Of course someone had seen. Emma's voice rose now, audible through walls and windows. "Nothing happened. He brought me cookies because I was alone on Christmas and he's a decent human being, which is apparently a foreign concept to you. Decent human beings don't spend the night with recent widows. He stayed because I asked him to, because this house is suffocating and I can't breathe in it, and for 3 hours I felt like maybe I could survive this." By replacing my son? The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. Ryan stood frozen at his window, his hands clenched, wanting to intervene and knowing it would only make things worse. When Margaret spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more dangerous. "I've been patient, Emma. I've given you space to grieve. But if you continue this relationship with that man, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are. I will contest David's will. I will tell everyone at the firm that you couldn't even wait 6 months before moving on. I will make your life very difficult. Get out. Emma's voice was shaking but firm. Get out of my house. This was my son's house, and he left it to me. It's my house now. Get out. Ryan heard a door slam, saw Margaret storm out to her rental car, her face twisted with rage even in the darkness. She peeled out of the driveway with enough force to spray gravel, and Ryan watched her taillights disappear before he made a decision that was probably stupid but felt necessary. He crossed the lawn in 4 quick strides and knocked on Emma's door. She opened it immediately, like she'd been waiting, her face blotchy with tears and rage. You heard that. The whole street heard that. Good. Let them hear. Let them all know that my dead husband's mother thinks I'm a whore for accepting kindness from a neighbor. Ryan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Emma was pacing the living room, her hands shaking, everything about her vibrating with fury and hurt. She threatened me, Ryan, threatened to destroy my reputation, contest the will, turn David's colleagues against me. All because you brought me cookies. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Emma spun to face him. Don't you dare apologize for being kind to me. She's the one who should apologize. She's the one who's turning my grief into some kind of soap opera scandal. What are you going to do? Emma laughed, the sound bitter. What can I do? She has money, connections, lawyers on retainer. I have a house I can't afford to keep and a dead husband's life insurance that she can tie up in legal battles for years if she wants to. She won't actually contest the will. That's just, you don't know her. Emma sank onto the couch, her anger deflating into exhaustion. She's already called David's boss. Did you know that? Told him I was having an inappropriate relationship with a neighbor. Asked if the company policy on life insurance payouts included moral clauses. Ryan felt sick. Emma, his boss called me yesterday. Very uncomfortable conversation about how he's sure there's nothing to the rumors, but perhaps I should be mindful of appearances during this difficult time. Emma's voice was flat, defeated. Translation: if Margaret makes enough noise, they'll find a reason to complicate the payout. That's illegal. Probably, but proving it means lawyers and time and energy I don't have. Emma looked up at him, her eyes red. She's going to win, Ryan. She's going to force me to choose between financial survival and having you in my life, and we both know what I have to choose. Ryan sat down in the armchair, the same one from Christmas Eve, from that first night. So that's it? She makes threats and you just give in? What's the alternative? Fight her? Lose everything David left me just to prove a point? Emma's voice cracked. I can't afford principles right now. I can barely afford to keep the heat on. Then let me help. How? You going to pay my mortgage? Cover my legal fees when Margaret decides to sue me for emotional distress? Emma shook her head. You have a daughter to support. I can't let you destroy your life trying to save mine. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on both of them. I should go, Ryan said finally, before someone sees my car again. Yeah, Emma didn't look at him. You should. Ryan stood, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I don't regret any of it. The lasagna, the snow shoveling, Christmas Eve, none of it. I know, that's what makes it so unfair. He left before he could say anything else, before he could make promises he couldn't keep, or offer solutions that didn't exist. The walk back to his house felt longer than it should have, and when he got inside, he stood at the window watching Emma's lights go out one by one until her house was dark again. The next morning, Ryan woke to find his truck's tires slashed. All 4 of them, clean cuts that were clearly deliberate, and when he walked around to check for a note or some explanation, he found a piece of paper tucked under his windshield wiper. Stay away from her. No signature. Didn't need one. Ryan called the police, filed a report with an officer who looked bored and sympathetic in equal measure. Probably kids, the officer said, writing notes on a clipboard. We've had some vandalism in the area. This wasn't kids. The officer looked up. You have reason to believe someone targeted you specifically? Ryan thought about explaining the whole situation. The dead husband, the grieving widow, the mother-in-law with connections and money and an axe to grind. He thought about how it would sound, how paranoid and dramatic. "No," he said finally. "Just a feeling." The officer nodded, closed his clipboard. "Well, if you remember anything specific or if it happens again, give us a call. In the meantime, you should probably get those tires replaced." Ryan called a tow truck, then his brother to come pick up Macy for school, then his insurance company who informed him that vandalism was covered, but his deductible was $800. He stood in his driveway watching the tow truck haul away his truck and did the math. $800 for the deductible, probably another $200 to rent a car for a week while the repairs were done. $1,000 he didn't really have because some psychopath thought slashing tires would solve neighborhood drama. Tom arrived to get Macy, took one look at Ryan's face and said, "What happened?" "Someone slashed my tires." "Someone or Margaret?" Ryan glanced toward Emma's house, saw a curtain move. "Can't prove anything." "But you know." "Yeah, I know." Tom drove Macy to school while Ryan called rental car companies and tried to figure out how to rearrange his budget to absorb a $1,000 hit. By the time he had a rental car delivered and was back at the dining room table trying to work, it was almost noon and his concentration was shot. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "I saw what happened. I'm so sorry." Ryan stared at the message, weighing his options. He could say it wasn't her fault, could absolve her of responsibility for Margaret's actions, or he could be honest. He typed, "This is getting out of hand. Emma, I know. I'm going to talk to her. Tell her to back off." Ryan, "That won't work. She's not going to stop until she gets what she wants." Emma, "Which is what? Me alone and miserable forever?" Ryan, "Me gone. Out of your life. No complications." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, maybe she's right. Maybe I need to figure this out on my own. Ryan felt the words like a physical blow, even though he'd known they were coming, even though this was the logical conclusion to everything that had happened. He typed, "If that's what you need," then deleted it. Typed, "I understand," deleted that too. Finally settled on, "Okay, Emma, I'm sorry. For all of it." Ryan didn't respond. He set his phone face down on the table and tried to focus on work, on the logo that still wasn't right, on the mock-up that needed revisions, on anything except the woman next door who was choosing survival over friendship and couldn't be blamed for it. The week crawled by. Ryan got his truck back, 4 new tires, and an $800 hole in his checking account. He saw Emma twice in passing, once getting her mail, once leaving for somewhere in the late afternoon, and both times they pretended not to see each other. The neighborhood seemed to settle back into normalcy. The Petersons had a dinner party. The Chens put up new outdoor lights. Marcus waved to Ryan across the street like nothing had happened, and Ryan waved back because what else could he do? On Saturday morning, Ryan was making breakfast when someone knocked on his door. He opened it to find Margaret standing on his porch, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Miller, do you have a moment?" Ryan's first instinct was to slam the door in her face. His second was to invite her in and let her say whatever she'd come to say. He went with the second option, stepping aside to let her enter. Margaret walked into his living room with the air of someone inspecting something unpleasant but necessary. She didn't sit down, didn't accept his offer of coffee, just stood in the middle of his living room with her hands folded in front of her. "I want to be very clear about something," she said without preamble. "I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're a man who saw an opportunity and took it." An opportunity? A vulnerable woman, a chance to play the hero. Maybe you even convinced yourself your intentions were pure. Ryan felt his jaw clench. Nothing happened between Emma and me. That's irrelevant. What matters is appearance. What matters is that my son's widow is being gossiped about because of your presence in her life. Margaret's voice was crisp, controlled. "I'm not here to threaten you, Mr. Miller. I'm here to appeal to whatever decency you possess. This should be good." Emma is fragile right now. She's not thinking clearly. She's latching onto the first person who showed her kindness because she's desperate not to feel alone. Margaret took a step closer. "But that kindness is hurting her. Every time you show up, every time you insert yourself into her life, you make it harder for her to heal. You make her dependent on you instead of learning to stand on her own. That's not what's happening, isn't it? She told me she slept for the first time in weeks when you stayed over, that she feels safe when you're around. That sounds like dependency to me. Ryan wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Because Margaret wasn't entirely wrong. Emma had said those things, had leaned on him in ways that maybe weren't healthy, had looked to him as an anchor when she needed to find her own stability. "What do you want from me?" Ryan asked finally. Distance. Real distance. No more midnight visits. No more driveway conversations. No more texts or calls or cookies or any of it. Margaret's expression softened slightly. "I know you care about her. If you truly care, you'll give her the space to grieve without distraction. You'll let her figure out who she is as a widow without someone waiting in the wings." "I'm not waiting in the wings." "Then prove it. Stay away. Let her heal." Margaret left without waiting for a response, and Ryan stood in his living room feeling like he'd just lost an argument he hadn't known he was having. Because the terrible thing was that part of him wondered if she was right. If his presence in Emma's life was helping or hurting. If his attempts at kindness were actually making things harder. He texted Emma. Margaret was just here. Emma called immediately. "What did she say?" "That I'm making things harder for you. That you need space to heal without me complicating things." "She has no right. But is she wrong?" Ryan cut her off. "Be honest. Is my being around making this harder?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small. "I don't know anymore. I don't know if I'm leaning on you because I need support or because I'm afraid to be alone. I don't know if what I'm feeling is friendship or desperation or something else entirely." "Okay? That's it? Just okay?" "What else can I say, Emma? You need to figure out what you need. I can't do that for you." "So you're giving up." "I'm giving you space. Like you asked for. Like Margaret demanded. Like everyone seems to think is best." "What if I don't want space?" Ryan closed his eyes, leaned against the wall. "Then you need to decide if you're willing to fight for it. Really fight. Legal battles and neighborhood gossip and Margaret making your life hell, because that's what it's going to take." "I can't," Emma's voice broke. "I can't lose everything, Ryan. I can't lose David's life insurance and the house and my reputation and everything. I just can't." "I know. So what do we do?" "You already know what we do. We stay away from each other. We go back to being neighbors who wave in passing. We let Margaret win because the cost of fighting is too high." Emma was crying now. He could hear it in her breathing. "I hate this." "Yeah, me too." They stayed on the phone in silence for a long moment, neither wanting to be the one to hang up, both knowing the conversation was over. "Take care of yourself, Emma." "You too, Ryan." The line went dead, and Ryan stood in his kitchen staring at his phone, feeling the weight of endings. February arrived with more snow and Valentine's Day decorations in store windows that felt like a personal insult. Macy made cards at school for her classmates, and Ryan helped her write names in careful letters while trying not to think about the fact that Emma's house had been dark for 3 days straight. On Valentine's Day itself, Ryan saw Emma's car leave the driveway around noon and not return until after dark. She carried in flowers, probably sent by well-meaning friends or family, and Ryan watched from his window as she let herself into the empty house. That night, after Macy was asleep, he found himself composing a text he had no intention of sending. "I hope you're okay. I hope someone told you today that you matter. I hope the flowers made you smile." He deleted it without sending, set his phone down, went to bed. March came in like a lion, all wind and cold rain that turned to ice overnight. Ryan's truck slid on black ice one morning, and he nearly crashed into a mailbox, his heart hammering as he corrected the steering. When he looked up, he saw Emma standing at her window, watching, her face pressed against the glass. Their eyes met for a second, and Ryan saw concern there, a flash of the old Emma who would have run outside to make sure he was okay. But she didn't move, and Ryan drove on, and the moment passed like so many others. Spring teased its arrival in fits and starts. Warmer days followed by unexpected snow. Crocuses pushing through frozen ground, the neighborhood shaking off winter like an old coat. Ryan saw Emma more as the weather improved, working in her yard, washing her car, sitting on her porch with a book. She looked thinner, more fragile, like something essential had been carved away and not replaced. They still didn't speak. One Saturday in late March, Ryan was raking winter debris from his lawn when he saw Margaret's car pull into Emma's driveway. He braced himself for shouting, for another scene, but this time Margaret stayed inside for less than an hour, and when she left, Emma came out to her porch and sat there crying. Ryan gripped the rake handle, war waging inside him. Every instinct screamed to go to her, to ask what was wrong, to offer comfort. But he'd promised distance. He'd agreed to stay away. So he stood in his yard holding a rake, watching Emma cry on her porch 20 feet away, and did nothing. That night, Emma texted him for the first time in 6 weeks. She wants me to sell the house, says I can't afford to keep it. Says David would want me to be practical. Ryan stared at the message for a long time before responding. What do you want? Emma, I want David back. I want none of this to have happened. I want to rewind to a year ago when everything was normal. Ryan, but you can't, so what do you want now? Emma, I don't know anymore. I feel like I'm drowning, and everyone keeps giving me advice about the right way to swim, but no one will actually pull me out of the water. Ryan typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, You're stronger than you think. Emma, I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm held together by spite and coffee. Ryan, that counts. Emma, does it? Ryan, yeah, it does. He waited for another message, but none came, and eventually he set his phone down and tried to sleep. April brought real warmth and the neighborhood came alive. Kids played in yards, people washed cars in driveways, the Petersons had a barbecue. Life continued in its relentless forward motion. Ryan threw himself into work, accepting every project that came his way, saying yes to tight deadlines and difficult clients because busy was better than thinking. His bank account recovered from the tire incident. Macy's school year wound toward its end. Everything was fine, except Ryan found himself watching Emma's house constantly, monitoring her comings and goings like some obsessed stalker, noting when her lights went on and off, keeping track of how many days passed between seeing her car move. It was unhealthy. He knew it was unhealthy, but he couldn't seem to stop. One evening in mid-April, Ryan was putting away groceries when Macy asked, "Why doesn't Miss Emma come over anymore?" Ryan froze with a bag of apples in his hand. "What do you mean?" "She used to come over sometimes, bring cookies, talk to you while I played. Now she doesn't. She's been busy, Bug. She's going through some hard stuff." "Because Mr. David died?" "Yeah." Macy thought about this, her face serious. "Is she mad at us?" "No, sweetheart. She's not mad at us." "Then why did she stop being our friend?" Ryan set down the apples, crouched to Macy's level. "Sometimes adults have to make hard choices. Miss Emma is trying to figure out her life after Mr. David died, and that means she needs some space to think." "Space like being alone?" "Kind of." "That sounds sad." Ryan pulled his daughter into a hug, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and the indefinable scent of childhood. "Yeah, Bug, it is sad." That night, after Macy was asleep, Ryan sat at his kitchen table and made a decision. He pulled out a piece of paper and wrote, "Emma, I know we're not supposed to be in touch. I know Margaret wants distance and you need space, and everyone thinks it's best if I stay out of your life. I'm trying to respect that. But I need you to know something. If you ever need help, real help, emergency help, the kind that matters more than gossip or Margaret's threats, I'm here. You can call at 3 a.m. You can knock on my door. You can ask for anything and I will show up, consequences be damned. You don't owe me anything. This isn't about that night or Christmas Eve or any of it. This is about the fact that you're my neighbor and you're going through something impossible, and I refuse to pretend I don't care what happens to you. So this is me, giving you an emergency contact you might never use, but it's here if you need it. Take care of yourself. Ryan." He folded the note, walked across the lawn in the darkness, and slipped it under Emma's front door. Then he walked back to his house before he could second-guess himself. His phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. A text from Emma. "Thank you for this, for everything, for not completely giving up even when I pushed you away." Ryan. "I couldn't give up on you if I tried." Emma. "You should. It would be easier." Ryan. "I've never been good at easy. Emma. I've noticed. Ryan smiled at his phone in the darkness. How are you, really? Emma. Tired, lonely, scared about money, angry at Margaret, sad about David, guilty about missing you, the usual. Ryan. You're allowed to miss people while grieving someone else. Emma. Margaret would disagree. Ryan. Margaret can go to hell. Emma. I'll tell her you said so. Ryan. Please do. He could almost hear Emma laughing on the other end. I might actually sell the house. She's right that I can't really afford it, and being here alone it's hard. Ryan. Where would you go? Emma. Apartment probably, something smaller, easier to manage. Ryan. When? Emma. I don't know, maybe this summer. I'm still thinking about it. They texted back and forth for another hour, the conversation easy and familiar in a way their in-person interactions had never been allowed to be. Finally, Emma sent, I should sleep. Thank you for this. For talking. I needed it. Ryan. Anytime, I mean that. Emma. I know. Good night, Ryan. Ryan. Good night, Emma. He set his phone down and lay in the darkness, thinking about houses and distance and the ways people navigated impossible situations. Thinking about Margaret's threats and neighborhood gossip and the price of helping someone who needed it. Thinking about Emma, alone in that house, trying to decide whether to hold on to a life that no longer fit or start over somewhere new. The night stretched on, and Ryan didn't sleep much, but somehow he felt lighter than he had in weeks. Because Emma had reached out. Because the distance wasn't total. Because maybe, despite everything, they were going to find a way through this. Or maybe that was just hope talking. But Ryan decided to let himself have it anyway, at least for tonight. The late-night text conversation became a pattern. Not every night, but enough that Ryan started keeping his phone on the nightstand instead of charging it in the kitchen. Emma would text around midnight, sometimes later, always starting with something small, a question about recycling schedules or whether he'd heard the noise outside or did he think it might rain tomorrow. They both knew these weren't the real questions. The real questions were the ones underneath. Are you still there? Do you still care? Am I allowed to reach out even though we're supposed to stay apart? And Ryan answered every time, playing along with the fiction that they were just neighbors discussing mundane things, while actually having the kinds of conversations people had when they were building something that didn't have a name yet. Emma told him about her job search. She needed to go back to work. The savings wouldn't last forever. She'd been a marketing coordinator before she married David, had stepped back to part-time when they bought the house, planning to ramp back up when kids came along. Kids that would never come now. Ryan told her about Macy's increasing independence, how she'd announced at dinner that she was big enough to walk to the bus stop by herself now, and how Ryan had agreed while making a mental note to watch from the window anyway. They talked about everything except the thing that hung between them, the impossibility of their situation, the weight of Margaret's threats, the neighborhood that watched Emma's house for signs of scandal. May arrived with an explosion of green and flowers and the kind of warmth that made winter feel like a distant memory. School was winding down, and Macy came home each day with another art project or form for Ryan to sign about field trips and end-of-year parties. Emma's house showed signs of change. A realtor's sign appeared in the yard one Thursday morning, and Ryan stared at it from his kitchen window while his coffee went cold. She was really doing it, really selling the house where she'd planned to build a life with David. He texted her, saw the sign. Emma. Yeah. It went up this morning. I'm meeting with the realtor this afternoon to discuss pricing. Ryan. How do you feel about it? Emma. Like I'm failing. Like I should be able to keep this house, honor David's memory by staying in the place we chose together. Ryan. Or you could honor his memory by doing what's best for you. Emma. When did you get so wise? Ryan. I'm not wise. I'm just someone who's had to make impossible choices and learned that surviving them is the only success that matters. Emma didn't respond for a while, and Ryan went back to work, trying to focus on a website redesign that wasn't cooperating. An hour later, his phone buzzed. Emma. The realtor thinks we can list it for $385K. I bought it with David for $290K 4 years ago. It feels obscene to profit from his death. Ryan. It's not profit, it's housing market appreciation. Emma. I know, but it feels wrong anyway. Ryan, most things about grief feel wrong. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Emma, I wish I could talk to you about this in person. Texting feels inadequate. Ryan stared at that message for a long time. They hadn't been in the same physical space since February, since Margaret's visit and the mutual agreement to maintain distance. 4 months of careful avoidance, of pretending they didn't see each other, of relegating their friendship to the safety of text messages after dark. He typed, "We could take a walk sometime. Public place." Nothing Margaret could twist into scandal. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, "I'd like that." They didn't set a specific time, didn't make concrete plans, and Ryan wondered if it would actually happen or if it was just another thing they said to make themselves feel better about the distance between them. 2 days later, on a Sunday afternoon, Emma knocked on his door. Ryan opened it to find her standing on his porch in jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back, looking nervous and determined in equal measure. "I know we said we'd take a walk," Emma said before Ryan could speak, "but I was thinking, and a walk feels too exposed. Too many neighbors watching, so I was wondering if maybe we could just talk here. On your porch? It's public enough that no one can accuse us of anything inappropriate, but private enough that we can actually have a conversation." Ryan stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. Macy was inside watching a movie, and he wanted to keep this separate, wanted to protect his daughter from the complications of adult relationships gone sideways. "Okay," he said, sitting down on the porch step. Emma sat next to him, careful to leave space between them, and for a moment neither spoke. Ryan could smell her shampoo, something floral and familiar, and realized how much he'd missed the simple fact of her presence. "The house went on the market yesterday," Emma said finally. "I already have 3 showings scheduled for next week." That was fast. "The market's competitive right now. My realtor says it'll probably sell within 2 weeks. Emma pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. "And then I'll be gone. Out of this neighborhood. Away from Margaret's surveillance. No more reason for anyone to gossip about us." "Where will you go?" "There's an apartment complex about 20 minutes from here. 2-bedroom, reasonable rent. It's not much, but it's enough." Emma turned to look at him. "I keep thinking about how different my life is going to look. A year ago, I was married, living in a house, planning for kids. Now I'm going to be a widow in a rental apartment with no idea what comes next." "That's not failure, Emma. That's survival." "Is it? Because it feels like I'm running away, like I'm letting Margaret win by leaving." Ryan shook his head. "You're not running away. You're making a choice that prioritizes your well-being over other people's expectations. That's strength, not weakness." Emma rested her chin on her knees, her eyes fixed on some point across the street. "I'm going to miss this, the neighborhood, my garden, the oak tree in the front yard that David and I planted our first week here." Her voice caught. "I'm going to miss you." Ryan felt the words settle in his chest, heavy and warm. "I'm going to miss you too." "We could still text," Emma said quickly. "Once I move, it wouldn't matter anymore, right? Margaret can't threaten me about what I do in my own apartment 20 minutes away." She could still make trouble with David's life insurance. "The payout already went through. She tried to delay it, but David's lawyer was good. Better than her lawyers." Emma smiled grimly. "That money is what's letting me do this. Sell the house, start over, tell Margaret to back off." They sat in silence for a while, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, the sound of someone's lawnmower in the distance. It was the most normal they'd been together in months, just 2 people sitting on a porch, and Ryan wanted to memorize it. The way Emma's hair caught the light, the small scar on her knee he'd never noticed before, the way she drummed her fingers against her leg when she was thinking. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said suddenly. "Always." "That night you stayed, before Margaret showed up, did you—" She paused, searching for words. "Did you feel it too? That thing between us that's more than just neighbors being friendly?" Ryan's breath caught. They'd been dancing around this for months, both pretending the connection was purely platonic, purely circumstantial. But Emma was asking him to be honest, and he owed her that. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I felt it." Emma nodded, like this confirmed something she'd suspected. I felt guilty about that for so long. Felt like I was betraying David by being attracted to someone else while I was grieving him. Are you? Attracted to me? She turned to look at him, and Ryan saw something raw and honest in her eyes. Yes. Which terrifies me because I don't trust my own feelings right now. I don't know if I'm actually attracted to you or if I'm just desperate for connection. I don't know if what I feel is real or if it's just grief looking for a place to land. I don't know either, Ryan admitted. All I know is that I think about you more than I should. I worry about you. I want to help you even when helping makes everything more complicated. That's not nothing. No, but it's also not a foundation for anything real. Not right now. Emma looked away, and Ryan saw her jaw tighten. So what do? We wait. You move, get settled, figure out who you are as a person who's not defined by grief. I stay here with Macy, keep working, keep living my life. And maybe in 6 months or a year, when you're more stable and I'm not the guy who showed up when you were at your lowest, we can figure out if this thing between us is real or if it was just timing. A year's a long time. It is. But if it's real, it'll still be there in a year. And if it's not, then we both saved ourselves a lot of pain. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with unshed tears. You're right. I hate it, but you're right. I usually am. It's both my best and worst quality. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. I should go, before someone sees us and starts rumors. Probably. But neither of them moved. They sat there on Ryan's porch as the afternoon stretched into early evening, talking about everything and nothing. Macy's upcoming 7th birthday, Emma's potential new job at a marketing firm downtown, whether it was worth getting a new car or keeping the one David had bought her 3 years ago. Normal conversation, easy conversation, the kind of conversation that felt like a preview of something they might have someday if the timing ever aligned and the world stopped conspiring against them. When Emma finally stood to leave, Ryan walked her to the edge of his property, stopping at the invisible line that separated his yard from hers. Thank you, Emma said, for this, for being honest, for not making me feel crazy for wanting something I shouldn't want right now. You're not crazy, you're just human. Emma reached out like she might touch his arm, then stopped herself, her hand hovering in the air between them before falling back to her side. I'll let you know when I move, if you want to know. I want to know. She nodded, then walked across the lawn to her house, and Ryan stood there watching until she disappeared inside. Then he went back to his own house, his own daughter who was calling for him because her movie had ended, his own life that felt simultaneously too full and not full enough. That night, Emma texted, I'm glad we talked. I've been holding that in for months. Ryan, me too. Emma, I meant what I said about being attracted to you, just so you know it wasn't just the moment talking. Ryan, I know, and for what it's worth, I think you're remarkable, even when you're a mess. Maybe especially then. Emma, that might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in months. Ryan, then people aren't paying attention. Emma, or you have very low standards for remarkable. Ryan, impossibly high standards, actually. You just happen to meet them. There was a long pause before her next message. This is going to be so hard, waiting, wondering if it's real. Ryan, yeah, but I think it'll be worth it. Emma, you'd better be right. Ryan, I usually am, remember? Emma, good night, Ryan. Ryan, good night, Emma. The house sold in 9 days. Emma texted him the news at work on a Wednesday. Accepted an offer this morning, cash buyer. They want to close in 3 weeks. Ryan felt the information settle over him like cold water. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, Emma would be gone from the house next door, from the neighborhood, from the daily proximity that had defined their relationship. He texted back, Congratulations. That's great. Emma, is it? I keep thinking I'm making a huge mistake. Ryan, you're not. You're doing what you need to do. Emma, I'm going to need help moving. I know I shouldn't ask, but I don't really have anyone else, and the movers are expensive and… Ryan, I'll help. Of course I'll help. Emma, Margaret will lose her mind. Ryan, let her, you're moving away. What's she going to do? Threaten to make your life difficult in a neighborhood you won't be living in? Emma, point taken. Thank you. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Emma sorted through a house full of memories, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Ryan watched from his window as donation trucks came and went, as boxes accumulated on the porch, as Emma's life was reduced to what would fit in a 2-bedroom apartment. He wanted to help earlier, wanted to be there for the hard parts, but Emma insisted she needed to do the initial sorting alone. If you're there, I'll ask your opinion on everything and I'll never let anything go, she texted one night. I need to be ruthless, and I can't be ruthless when you're being kind. So Ryan waited, working on his own projects, managing Macy's end-of-school year activities, and watching Emma dismantle a life she'd built with someone else. Moving day arrived on a humid Saturday in early June. Ryan hired his brother Tom to watch Macy for the day, then showed up at Emma's house at 7 a.m. to find her sitting on the front steps surrounded by boxes, looking exhausted. You're early, she said. You look like you haven't slept. I was up until 3 trying to decide if I should keep David's college trophies. Ended up keeping them. Emma gestured to a box labeled storage. I'll probably never look at them again, but I couldn't throw them away. You don't have to throw anything away. I know, but it feels like I should be able to let go. Emma stood, brushing off her jeans. Thank you for doing this. I know it's... Don't thank me. We're friends. This is what friends do. Emma smiled, the expression tired but genuine. Are we friends? After everything? Yeah, we are. They worked through the morning, loading boxes into a rental truck Emma had gotten from the hardware store. It was hard physical labor made harder by the June heat, and by noon they were both drenched in sweat and exhausted. I'm ordering pizza, Emma declared, pulling out her phone. And I don't care if Margaret drives by and sees us eating lunch together. I've earned this pizza. They sat on the porch steps eating pepperoni pizza straight from the box while the neighborhood moved around them. Cars drove by, people walked dogs. Marcus Chen waved from across the street and called out, Need help? But didn't wait for an answer before continuing his walk. He's been weird since the tire incident, Emma said quietly. I think he knows his son saw you leaving that morning. Feels guilty. It's not his fault his kid has insomnia. Still, Emma took another bite of pizza. This whole neighborhood has been weird, polite but weird. Like they're not sure if they should acknowledge me or pretend I don't exist. People don't know how to handle death, especially when it's someone young. David would have hated this, all the awkwardness and tiptoeing. Emma's voice caught. He was so good at making people comfortable. He could walk into a room full of strangers and have everyone laughing within 10 minutes. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He'd known David in the way neighbors knew each other, surface level, friendly, ultimately superficial. He couldn't compete with memories, couldn't offer comfort about a man he'd barely known. He sounds like he was great, Ryan said finally. He was. And he deserved better than dying at 35 of a heart attack no one saw coming. Emma set down her pizza, wiped her hands on her jeans. Sorry, I know this is weird talking to you about him. It's not weird. He was your husband. He's part of your story. But not part of yours. Maybe not directly, but he's part of what brought us to this moment, sitting on your porch, eating pizza on moving day. So in a way, he's part of this too. Emma looked at him for a long moment. How are you single? Seriously. How has no one snapped you up? Ryan laughed. Have you met my life? Single dad, freelance income, emotional baggage from a wife who left? I'm not exactly a catch. You're wrong, but I'm glad you think that because it means I get you to myself. Eventually. Maybe. Definitely, maybe. They finished the pizza and went back to work, loading the last of the boxes as the afternoon heat peaked. By 3 p.m., the truck was full and Emma's house was empty, echoing in a way that felt wrong. Ryan walked through the rooms one last time, checking for forgotten items, and found Emma standing in the master bedroom staring at the empty space where a bed used to be. This is where I found him, she said quietly. He was getting ready for bed. Said he felt weird, like indigestion. I was downstairs watching TV. By the time I came up 10 minutes later, he was on the floor. Emma's voice was flat, reciting facts. I called 911. Did CPR like they told me to, but he was already gone. The paramedic told me later that he probably didn't feel much pain. Heart just stopped. Ryan stood in the doorway, giving her space. I haven't been able to sleep in here since, Emma continued. I've been sleeping on the couch. Couldn't face this room. She turned to look at Ryan. I thought moving would feel like freedom, like I was finally escaping this house and all the memories. But standing here, I just feel like I'm abandoning him. You're not abandoning him. You're choosing to live. There's a difference. Emma nodded, but Ryan could see tears tracking down her face. I loved him. I need you to know that. Whatever happens with us, if anything happens with us, I loved my husband. I know. And I'm not over him. I might never be completely over him. I know that too. Emma wiped at her face. Okay, good. I just needed to say it. They drove the truck to Emma's new apartment across town, a modern complex that looked like every other apartment building Ryan had ever seen. Beige siding, small balconies, a pool that probably got used twice a year. Emma's unit was on the second floor, and they spent the next 3 hours hauling boxes upstairs while Emma directed traffic and tried to decide where things should go. By 6 p.m., they were done. The truck was empty, Emma's boxes were stacked in her new living room, and they were both too exhausted to speak. I should go, Ryan said, leaning against the kitchen counter. Get the truck back before they charge me for an extra day. Yeah. Emma looked around her new space, surrounded by boxes and furniture that didn't quite fit. This is it, my new life. It's a good start. Is it? Ryan walked over to where she stood, stopping just close enough that he could see the flecks of green in her eyes. Yeah, it is, because it's yours. You chose it. You made it happen, despite Margaret and the gossip and all the people who thought you couldn't do it alone. Emma reached out and took his hand, the contact electric after months of careful distance. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. You just didn't have to. They stood there for a moment, hands linked, and Ryan felt the weight of possibility pressing down on them. It would be so easy to kiss her right now, so easy to cross the line from friendship to something more, to give in to the attraction that had been building between them for months. But Emma had been right on his porch 3 weeks ago. She needed time to figure out who she was outside of grief. And Ryan needed to be sure that what he felt was real and not just the hero complex Sarah Peterson had warned him about. So he squeezed her hand once and let go, stepping back to safe distance. Text me when you get settled, he said. Let me know if you need anything. I will. Ryan left before he could change his mind, driving the empty truck back to the rental place and then his own car back to his house, his daughter, his life that felt smaller without Emma next door. That night, Emma texted, I'm sitting in my new apartment surrounded by boxes, and I have no idea where anything is, and I kind of love it. It's chaos, but it's my chaos. Ryan, that's the spirit. Emma, thank you again for today, for all of it. Ryan, stop thanking me. Friends help friends move. It's in the handbook. Emma, what handbook? Ryan, the friendship handbook. You didn't get your copy? Emma, must have gotten lost in the move. Ryan smiled at his phone. How does it feel, being on your own? Emma, terrifying, liberating, lonely, exciting, all of it at once. Ryan, sounds about right. Emma, I keep waiting for Margaret to call and tell me I made a mistake, or for David's ghost to appear and ask why I left our house. Ryan, have you considered that maybe you're allowed to make choices without waiting for permission or punishment? Emma, what a concept. Ryan, revolutionary, I know. They texted for another hour, Emma sending him photos of her unpacking attempts, Ryan offering suggestions on furniture placement that she mostly ignored. It felt easy, comfortable, like they'd found their rhythm again now that the pressure of proximity was gone. Over the next few weeks, Emma settled into her new apartment and her new job at the marketing firm downtown. She sent Ryan updates, photos of her small balcony garden, complaints about her commute, excitement about her first paycheck in years. Ryan focused on Macy's summer activities, his work deadlines, and not driving across town to check on Emma every time she mentioned feeling overwhelmed. They talked every few days, sometimes texts, sometimes calls after Macy was asleep. Emma told him about her coworkers, about the strange freedom of coming home to an empty apartment, about the ways grief snuck up on her at unexpected moments. Ryan told her about Macy's swimming lessons, about the client who kept asking for revisions on a project that had been perfect 3 versions ago, about the strange emptiness of the house next door that now had a new family moving in. "What are they like?" Emma asked one night in late June. "Young couple, 2 kids under 5, very loud. They introduced themselves and invited Macy over to play." "That's nice." "Yeah, it is." Ryan paused. "It's weird, though, seeing other people in your house, other kids in your yard." "It's not my house anymore." "I know, but it still feels like it should be." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Do you miss me?" "Every day." "Good. I'd be offended if you didn't." Ryan laughed. "How's the whole figuring out who you are thing going?" "Slowly. I'm seeing a therapist. Margaret would have a field day if she knew." "What you tell Margaret is none of Margaret's business." "She called yesterday, asked how I was settling in. It was almost pleasant. Progress. Or she's planning something. I haven't decided which." July brought summer heat and Macy's 7th birthday, a small party at the house with 6 of her classmates, and enough sugar to power a small city. Ryan managed to not burn the birthday cake and counted it as a parenting win. Emma texted that evening, "Happy birthday to Macy. I can't believe she's 7. Ryan, "Neither can I. Time is weird." Emma, "I got her something. Can I drop it off sometime?" Ryan, "You don't have to do that." Emma, "I want to. I miss that kid." They arranged for Emma to come by on Saturday afternoon, a casual visit that felt momentous in its normalcy. When she arrived, Macy shrieked with excitement and threw herself at Emma in a hug that nearly knocked them both over. "Miss Emma, you're here! Dad said you moved away, but you're here!" Emma laughed, hugging Macy back. "I did move, but I'm not that far away. And I brought you a birthday present." Macy tore into the wrapped package to reveal a set of art supplies, fancy markers, sketch pads, colored pencils in more colors than Ryan knew existed. "This is amazing," Macy bounced on her toes. "Can I use them now?" "That's what they're for," Emma said. Macy disappeared to the dining room table to immediately start creating, and Emma and Ryan were left standing on the porch. "She's gotten bigger," Emma said. "Kids do that." "Smart ass," Emma smiled. "Can we talk for a minute?" They sat on the porch steps, the same spot where they'd had their honest conversation about attraction and timing, and Ryan felt the echo of that moment. "I've been thinking," Emma started, "about us, about the whole wait a year thing." Ryan's heart rate picked up. "Yeah? I think you were right. I needed time to figure out who I am without David, without the grief being the main thing defining me." Emma turned to look at him. "But I've also realized something. I'm never going to be completely not grieving. There's always going to be a part of me that misses him, that wishes things had been different. And if I wait until I'm completely healed to explore this thing between us, I'll be waiting forever." "Okay. So I was thinking maybe we could try something. Not dating exactly, not yet. But maybe we could have dinner sometime, as more than friends but less than a relationship. See how it feels when we're not in crisis mode." Ryan felt something unfold in his chest, warm and hopeful. "I'd like that." "Yeah? Yeah. But Emma, I need you to know I'm not trying to replace David. I couldn't even if I wanted to. This is something different, something that's ours." "I know." Emma reached for his hand. "That's why I think it might actually work." They sat there on Ryan's porch holding hands while Macy created art inside, and the summer afternoon stretched out around them, and for the first time in months, Ryan let himself believe that maybe the timing was finally starting to align. Their first dinner happened on a Wednesday evening in mid-July. Ryan arranged for Tom to watch Macy overnight, telling his brother more with his nervous energy than with words. Tom had grinned and said, "About damn time," and didn't ask questions Ryan wasn't ready to answer. Emma chose a small Italian restaurant halfway between her apartment and Ryan's house, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and servers who'd been working there for decades. It was quiet, tucked away on a side street where the chances of running into anyone from the old neighborhood were minimal. Ryan arrived first, his palms sweating despite the air conditioning, feeling like a teenager on a first date even though he was 32 years old and had been married before. This felt different, though. Higher stakes. More fragile. Emma walked in 10 minutes later wearing a blue dress Ryan had never seen before, her hair down around her shoulders, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. "Hi," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "How you look beautiful." Emma's cheeks flushed. "You clean up pretty well yourself." They ordered wine, made small talk about the menu, danced around the weight of what they were doing until the server left and they were alone with the candle flickering between them. "I'm nervous," Emma admitted. "Is that stupid? We've known each other for over a year." "I'm nervous too." "Really?" "Really, this feels important." Emma reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "It is important. That's why I'm terrified I'm going to mess it up." "You won't." "You don't know that." Ryan turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "No. But I know you, and I know that whatever happens, we'll figure it out." They talked through dinner about everything except the past year. Emma's new job and the coworker who kept microwaving fish in the break room, Macy's obsession with learning to cartwheel, Ryan's ongoing battle with a client who wanted a logo that was somehow both minimalist and decorative. Normal conversation between two people getting to know each other, except they already knew each other in the ways that mattered. Over dessert, tiramisu they shared from the same plate, Emma said, "I told my therapist about you." "Yeah, what did you say?" "That there's this man who stayed when everyone else left, who helped me move and shoveled my driveway and brought me lasagna and never asked for anything in return." Emma took a bite of tiramisu. "She asked if I was in love with you." Ryan's heart stuttered. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know. That I'm still figuring out what I feel versus what I think I should feel." Emma met his eyes. "But I told her I want to find out. And she said that was healthy, as long as I'm honest with myself and with you about where I am." "Where are you?" Emma set down her fork, considering. "I'm attracted to you. I care about you. I think about you more than I probably should. But I'm also still grieving David, still figuring out who I am as a widow, still untangling what's real feeling versus what's just needing someone to lean on." She paused. "Is that fair to you? Starting something when I can't promise I'm all in yet?" Ryan thought about it, really thought about it. He could say no, could protect himself from potential heartbreak, could walk away and wait until Emma was more certain. Or he could take the risk, could trust that sometimes the best things in life came with uncertainty attached. "Yeah," he said finally. "It's fair, because I'm not all in yet either. I'm interested. I want to see where this goes. But I've got Macy to think about, and I can't bring someone into her life unless I'm sure it's real and lasting." "So we're both cautiously exploring this?" "Cautiously exploring. I like it. Very adult of us." Emma laughed. "We're so mature." "The most mature?" They finished dessert, and Ryan paid the bill despite Emma's protests, and then they were standing in the parking lot under summer stars, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "Can we do this again?" Emma asked. "Not wait another month? Maybe next week?" "I'd like that." Emma stepped closer, close enough that Ryan could count her freckles in the parking lot lights. "Can I kiss you, or is that moving too fast?" Ryan's answer was to close the distance between them, his hand cupping her face as he kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious that might break. Emma's arms went around his neck, and for a moment everything else fell away. Margaret's threats, neighborhood gossip, grief and guilt, and all the complications. For a moment it was just them, two people taking a chance on something that felt like it might be worth the risk. When they pulled apart, Emma was smiling. "Okay, that was worth waiting for." "Just okay?" "Fine. It was amazing. Don't let it go to your head." Ryan kissed her again, less carefully this time, and Emma made a small sound that shot straight through him. "We should stop," she said against his mouth, "before we get carried away in a parking lot." Probably wise. But neither of them moved, standing there wrapped around each other like teenagers, until someone walked by and they broke apart laughing. Ryan drove home with Emma's taste still on his lips, and a feeling in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. Hope mixed with possibility, mixed with the terrifying sense that he was stepping off a cliff and hoping someone had built a bridge. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a pattern. Dinner once a week, sometimes twice, if schedules aligned. Emma came by on Saturday afternoons to see Macy, bringing art supplies or books, or once a butterfly kit that resulted in Ryan's kitchen being invaded by caterpillars. They texted daily, called most nights after Macy was asleep, built something that felt solid even in its newness. August arrived with brutal heat, and Macy's return to school approaching. Ryan took her shopping for supplies, let her pick out a backpack with butterflies on it, listened to her chatter about being in second grade now, and how that made her practically grown up. "Is Miss Emma your girlfriend?" Macy asked one evening while they were eating dinner. Ryan nearly choked on his water. "What makes you ask that?" "She comes over a lot, and you smile different when she's here. Like how Tommy Anderson's dad smiles at his new wife." Ryan set down his fork, choosing his words carefully. "Miss Emma and I are good friends. We spend time together because we like each other." "But do you like her?" "When did you learn about, liking people?" "School. Emma Kay says her sister has a boyfriend and they like each other and kiss and stuff." Macy wrinkled her nose. "It's gross, but also kind of nice, I guess." Ryan took a breath. "Okay, yes. I like Miss Emma, but it's new and we're taking things slow, so I need you not to tell anyone yet, okay?" "Not even Elephant?" "Elephant can know, but no one else." Macy nodded seriously. "Okay. Can she come to my birthday party at school?" "Your birthday isn't until next year." "I know, but when it happens, can she come?" "We'll see." That night, Ryan told Emma about the conversation. They were at her apartment, a rare evening without Macy when Tom had taken her to a movie, and Emma was cooking dinner while Ryan sat at her small kitchen counter watching. "She asked if you're my girlfriend," he said. Emma looked up from the pasta she was stirring. "What did you say?" "I said we're taking things slow, that we like each other, but it's new." "How did she react?" "She wanted to know if you could come to her birthday party, which isn't until next March." Emma laughed. "I like her planning skills." She set down the spoon, came around the counter to where Ryan sat. "Are we taking things too slow? Be honest." Ryan pulled her between his knees, his hands on her waist. "I don't think so. I think we're being smart." "Smart is boring." "Smart is what keeps us from crashing and burning." Emma kissed him, slow and deep. "What if I want to crash a little bit?" "Emma, I know, Macy. Taking it slow. Being responsible." She rested her forehead against his. "But I'm tired of being careful. I've been careful for 8 months. At some point, doesn't the grief have to give me permission to be happy?" Ryan understood the frustration. They'd been dating, if that's what this was, for 6 weeks, and they'd been almost painfully cautious. No sleepovers, no meeting each other's families, nothing that would signal to the outside world that they were more than friends. It made sense logically, protected both of them and Macy from complications. But Emma was right. At some point, caution became just another form of fear. "What do you want?" Ryan asked. "I want to tell people. Not everyone. Not Margaret. Definitely not Margaret. But I want to be able to hold your hand in public without worrying about who's watching. I want Macy to know that you and I are together because eventually she's going to figure it out anyway. I want to stop treating this like it's something we need to hide." "Okay?" Emma pulled back to look at him. "Okay? Yeah. Let's tell people. Let's be a couple who exists in daylight, not just in restaurants across town and late-night phone calls." Emma's smile could have lit up the whole apartment. "Really? Really, I'm tired of being careful, too." They made it official that weekend, starting with Macy, who took the news with 7-year-old pragmatism. "I already knew. Can we have pancakes now?" Tom was next, offering Ryan a beer and saying, "I'm happy for you, man. Just don't screw it up." "Helpful advice, thanks." "I'm serious. That woman is good for you. You smile more, stress less." Even Macy's noticed. Ryan had noticed, too. The way his shoulders didn't carry as much tension. The way he looked forward to evenings instead of just surviving them. The way life felt fuller with Emma in it. They told Emma's friends from work over a group dinner, and while there were some raised eyebrows about the timeline, Emma's husband had been dead less than a year, most people were supportive. Her best friend Sarah, who worked in accounting, pulled Emma aside and said, "Are you sure about this? It's so soon." Emma's response was firm. "I'm sure I'm not going to apologize for finding happiness. David's gone. I can't bring him back by being alone forever." The real test came in September, when Emma got a call from Margaret. They were at Ryan's house, the three of them making dinner together. Ryan chopping vegetables, Emma stirring sauce, Macy setting the table with intense concentration. It felt domestic and normal and right, which is probably why Ryan's stomach dropped when Emma's phone rang and Margaret's name appeared on the screen. Emma looked at Ryan, her face going pale. "I should take this." She stepped into the living room, and Ryan tried not to eavesdrop while also completely eavesdropping. "Hi, Margaret. Yes, I'm doing well. The apartment is great. Work is good." Emma's voice was careful, controlled. Then, "Actually, I'm glad you called. There's something I should tell you." Ryan's hand tightened on the knife he was holding. "I'm seeing someone. It's new, but it's serious, and I wanted you to hear it from me rather than through the neighborhood gossip." A long pause. Ryan could hear Margaret's voice through the phone, high and sharp, but couldn't make out words. "Yes, it's Ryan Miller, the neighbor." Emma's voice hardened. "And before you say anything, I need you to listen. I love David. I will always love David. But he's gone. And I'm not. And I refuse to spend the rest of my life alone because you think there's some arbitrary timeline for when I'm allowed to move on." More sharp words from Margaret. "That's not fair. Ryan was kind to me when I was drowning. He didn't take advantage, didn't push, didn't do any of the things you accused him of. He was just there. And now I'm choosing to be with him because he makes me happy, and I deserve to be happy." Ryan could hear Margaret yelling now, loud enough that Macy looked up from her carefully arranged silverware with worried eyes. "I understand you're upset," Emma said, her voice shaking but firm. "But this isn't your decision to make. I'm not asking for your permission or your blessing. I'm telling you as a courtesy because you are David's mother, and I respect that. But if you can't be supportive, or at least civil, then I think we need some distance." Margaret's response was loud enough that Ryan heard the word disgrace clearly. Emma's response was quiet, but final. "Then I guess we need distance. Goodbye, Margaret." She ended the call and stood there for a moment, her shoulders shaking, before Ryan crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her. "I'm sorry," he said into her hair. "Don't be. That needed to happen." Emma pulled back, wiping at her eyes. "She's going to tell everyone, David's family, his friends, people at his old company. She's going to make me out to be the woman who replaced her husband before he was cold in the ground." "Let her. People who matter will understand." "Will they? We started this relationship less than a year after David died. That looks bad, Ryan. You know it does." Ryan cupped her face in his hands. "I don't care how it looks. I care how it is. And how it is two people who found each other in terrible circumstances and chose to build something good. There's nothing shameful in that." Macy appeared at Ryan's elbow, elephant tucked under her arm. "Miss Emma, are you sad?" Emma crouched down to Macy's level. "A little bit, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups have hard conversations." "Is it about Mr. David?" Emma looked surprised. "How did you know about Mr. David?" "Dad told me when you were sad before. He said Mr. David was in heaven now, and you missed him." "That's right. I do miss him, but I'm also happy now with you and your dad. Is that okay?" Macy considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "My mom went away and Dad was sad for a long time. But now he smiles more because of you, so I think it's okay to be sad about people who left and happy about people who stayed." Emma's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she was smiling. "You're pretty smart, you know that?" "Dad says I get it from him." "I say you get it from your stubbornness," Ryan corrected, "which you also got from me." They ate dinner together, the three of them, and if there was a weight hanging over the evening from Margaret's call, they chose not to let it ruin the moment. After Macy went to bed, Ryan and Emma sat on the couch and talked about what came next. "She's going to make trouble," Emma said. "I know her. She'll call David's family, tell them I've disrespected his memory. Some of them will believe her, and some won't. The ones who matter will see that you're living your life, not erasing his. I should call David's sister, Rachel. We were close before he died. She deserves to hear this from me." Emma made the call that night, and Rachel's response was kinder than Margaret's had been. "I'm happy you're happy, Emma. David would want that too. Mom's just, she's struggling. Give her time. Time. The thing they'd been given and taken and used to build something fragile and real. Time that had passed with Emma learning to sleep through the night again, Ryan learning to trust someone new, both of them learning that sometimes the best things grew in the spaces grief created. October brought cooler weather and Macy's School Fall Festival. Emma came with them, and if people stared at Ryan and Emma holding hands while Macy played carnival games, they chose not to care. Some neighbors from the old street were there, the Petersons, Marcus Chen with his family, and Sarah Peterson pulled Ryan aside while Emma was helping Macy with ring toss. "I'm happy for you," Sarah said. "I know I warned you to keep your distance, and maybe that was wrong. You were trying to help." "I was trying to prevent gossip, but you know what? Gossip happens anyway. Might as well give them something real to talk about." Sarah smiled. "Emma looks happy, really happy." "She is. We both are." "Good. That's good." Marcus approached next, his wife trailing behind. "Ryan, Emma, good to see you both." There was an awkward pause before Marcus continued. "I owe you an apology. My son, he told Margaret about seeing you that morning, and I should have talked to him about privacy and not spreading rumors. I didn't realize it would cause so much trouble." Ryan shook his head. "Your kid saw what he saw. That's not on you." "Still, I'm sorry." Marcus extended his hand and Ryan shook it, letting go of a resentment he'd been carrying for months. November arrived with Thanksgiving on the horizon, and Emma asked the question Ryan had been dreading. "What are we doing for Thanksgiving?" They were at her apartment, cooking dinner together in the small kitchen that had become familiar territory. Ryan chopped onions while Emma seasoned chicken, a domestic routine that felt more significant than it probably was. "Tom invited us upstate," Ryan said. "Like every year. What about you?" "I was supposed to go to my parents in Connecticut, but they called yesterday and said Margaret is coming, and maybe it would be better if I skipped this year to avoid drama." Ryan set down the knife. "They disinvited you because of Margaret?" "They didn't disinvite me exactly. They just strongly suggested that my presence might make things uncomfortable." Emma's voice was tight. "My own parents choosing David's mother over me. That's not okay. It's family politics. Margaret has been close with my parents for years. They're trying to keep the peace. By excluding their own daughter?" Emma shrugged, but Ryan could see the hurt in her eyes. "It's fine. I'll just stay here. Have a quiet Thanksgiving alone." "No, you won't. You're coming with us." Emma looked up. "To your brothers?" "Ryan, that's a family thing. I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. You're my girlfriend. That makes you family." Ryan crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. "Besides, Tom already assumed you were coming. He told Linda to set an extra place." "He did?" "He did. Because unlike your parents, my family understands that you deserve support, not exile." Emma buried her face in his shoulder. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You survived something impossible. You chose to keep living. That's what you did to deserve happiness." Thanksgiving at Tom's house was loud and chaotic and perfect. Macy played with her cousins while Ryan helped in the kitchen, and Emma charmed Linda with stories about her disastrous first attempts at cooking in her new apartment. Tom pulled Ryan aside before dinner and said, "She fits. With you, with Macy, with all of this. Don't let her go." "I don't plan to." "Good, because Linda already likes her better than she likes you." During dinner, Linda asked Emma about her work, and Macy insisted on sitting next to Emma, and the conversation flowed easily around the table. At one point, Ryan caught Emma's eye across the turkey and stuffing, and she smiled at him with something that looked like contentment. After dinner, while the kids were watching a movie and the adults were recovering from too much food, Emma's phone rang. Her mother. Emma stepped outside to take the call, and Ryan watched through the window as she paced the porch, her free hand gesturing as she talked. When she came back inside 15 minutes later, her eyes were red, but her expression was lighter. "My mom apologized," Emma said quietly. "Said she'd been wrong to prioritize Margaret's feelings over mine. Said she wants me to come for Christmas, with you and Macy if we want." "That's good." "Yeah." Emma leaned against Ryan's shoulder. "She said something else too. She said David called her once from a business trip, maybe 6 months before he died. Told her that if anything ever happened to him, he wanted me to be happy. Wanted me to find someone who would take care of me." Emma's voice caught. She said she forgot about that conversation until today, when she realized she was dishonoring his wishes by pushing me away. Ryan wrapped his arm around her. He sounds like he was a good guy. He was. And I think he would have liked you. You're both the kind of men who show up when people need you. December arrived with early snow and Christmas decorations going up around the neighborhood. Emma and Ryan took Macy to cut down a Christmas tree, the three of them trudging through a tree farm in the cold while Macy debated the merits of various pines. They chose one that was too tall for Ryan's living room, and the farm had to cut 2 feet off the bottom, but Macy declared it perfect. They decorated it together one Saturday afternoon, Emma having brought over a box of ornaments from her apartment. Some were new, things she'd bought for her fresh start, but some were old, ornaments from the house she'd shared with David. "Is it weird?" Emma asked as she hung a glass snowflake. "Having his ornaments on your tree?" Ryan hung a paper angel Macy had made in kindergarten next to it. "No, they're part of your story, and your story is part of what I love about you." Emma turned to look at him. "What did you just say?" Ryan realized what he'd said, the word that had slipped out naturally. Love. He could backtrack, could claim he meant something else, could run from the vulnerability of the admission, or he could be honest. "I love you," he said clearly. "I know it's only been a few months. I know the timing is complicated, but I love you, Emma Lawson." Emma set down the ornament she was holding and crossed to him, her hands framing his face. "I love you too. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to, if it was too soon or too complicated or disrespectful to David's memory. But my therapist says love isn't a finite resource, that loving you doesn't mean I loved him less, and I'm choosing to believe that." They kissed surrounded by Christmas lights and half-decorated tree, and Macy shouted from the kitchen, "Are you kissing again? That's gross." "Get used to it, Bug," Ryan called back. "Never." But when Macy came into the living room a moment later, she was smiling. Christmas came with Emma spending the night on Christmas Eve, her first sleepover, Macy asleep upstairs while Ryan and Emma assembled presents and drank wine and talked about the future in vague, hopeful terms. They woke early to Macy's excited shrieks, opened presents in pajamas, made pancakes because it was Christmas, and every day could be pancake day if you wanted it to be. In the afternoon, they drove to Connecticut to Emma's parents' house, where Emma's mother hugged them all too tight, and her father grilled Ryan about his intentions, and Emma's younger sister declared the whole thing romantic as hell. Margaret wasn't there. She'd sent a card to Emma's parents with no return address, just a brief note saying she needed time. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was space, which was something. New Year's Eve found them at Emma's apartment, Macy asleep in Emma's bed while Ryan and Emma sat on her small balcony wrapped in blankets, watching fireworks in the distance. "Last year at this time, I thought my life was over," Emma said quietly. "I couldn't imagine a future that didn't include David. Couldn't imagine being happy again. And now? Now I'm sitting on a balcony with a man I love, my heart full in ways I didn't think were possible anymore." Emma turned to look at him. "You saved me, Ryan Miller." "No, you saved yourself. I just happened to be there when you did it." The fireworks exploded in bursts of color, and Emma kissed him as the new year began, and Ryan thought about how strange life was, how tragedy and timing could intersect to create something beautiful, how grief could make space for new love without erasing old love, how sometimes the best things came from the worst circumstances. Winter stretched into spring. Emma's lease came up for renewal, and she chose not to renew it, moving instead into Ryan's house in a gradual process that involved many discussions with Macy about sharing space and bathroom schedules, and whether Elephant approved of Miss Emma living with them permanently. Elephant approved. They blended their lives slowly and carefully, Emma keeping her own bedroom at first before that fiction became unnecessary, and her room became a home office instead. They navigated the awkwardness of merging households, whose dishes to keep, how to combine furniture, whether Emma's obsessive labeling system for the pantry was helpful or insane. Macy adapted with the resilience of children, occasionally asking about her mom, but mostly accepting that her family now included Miss Emma, who wasn't Miss anymore, just Emma, who made really good cookies and helped with homework and tucked her in at night sometimes when Dad was working late. On a Saturday in April, almost exactly a year after Emma had sold her house and moved away from Maple Street, they drove back to the old neighborhood. The family who'd bought Emma's house had painted it a different color, had added a swing set in the backyard, had made it theirs in all the ways that mattered. They stood on the sidewalk looking at it, Ryan's hand in Emma's, and Emma said, "I don't miss it." Isn't that strange? I thought I would always miss it, but standing here, all I feel is gratitude that I got to leave. It's not strange, it's growth. David and I chose that house together. We were going to raise our kids there. It was supposed to be forever. But it wasn't, and that's okay. Emma squeezed his hand. Do you think he knows? Wherever he is? Do you think he knows I'm happy? Ryan thought about the conversation Emma's mother had shared, about David's wish for Emma to find happiness if something happened to him, about the kind of love that wanted the best for someone, even in absence. Yeah, Ryan said, I think he knows. They drove back to their house. Not Emma's apartment, not Ryan's house, but theirs, the place they'd built together from pieces of broken lives and stubborn hope. Macy was spending the night at a friend's house, which meant they had the evening to themselves, a rare luxury. They made dinner together, Emma teaching Ryan her mother's recipe for pot roast while he tried not to burn the vegetables. They ate on the back porch as the sun set, talking about Macy's upcoming 8th birthday, about Emma's potential promotion at work, about whether they should finally replace the ancient dishwasher or continue to pretend it worked. After dinner, as they cleaned up together in the kitchen that had become their shared space, Ryan pulled a small box from his pocket. Emma. She turned from the sink, saw the box, and her hands flew to her mouth. Ryan, what? Let me say this before I lose my nerve. Ryan opened the box to reveal a simple ring, a single stone that had cost more than he could really afford but less than Emma deserved. I know it hasn't been that long. I know people will say it's too soon, that we rushed, that grief isn't a foundation for a relationship, but I don't care what people say anymore. Ryan, I love you. I love who you are, strong and fragile and fighting every day to build a life worth living. I love who we are together. I love the family we're building, and I want to make it official, not to replace what you had with David, but to honor what we have together. He took a breath. Will you marry me? Emma was crying, tears streaming down her face as she nodded. Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like salt and joy and promises they'd both learned were precious because they weren't guaranteed. They called Macy first, who shrieked so loud Ryan had to hold the phone away from his ear. Does this mean Emma's going to be my mom now? If she wants to be, Ryan said, looking at Emma. I want to be, Emma said into the phone. If you want me to be. Can I call you Mom? You can call me whatever feels right. What about Emma Mom? Emma Mom works. They called their families next. Emma's parents crying with happiness. Tom demanding to know why Ryan hadn't asked for his blessing first. Macy's voice in the background on Tom's phone asking if she could be the flower girl. The wedding happened in September, small and intimate in Tom's backyard with 30 people who mattered. Macy was indeed the flower girl, taking her job seriously enough that she practiced her walk for 3 weeks beforehand. Emma wore a simple white dress. Ryan wore the suit he'd bought for David's funeral and had tailored to fit better. And when they exchanged vows, they promised not perfection, but presence. Not to never grieve, but to grieve together. Not to erase the past, but to build a future alongside it. Margaret didn't come, but she sent a card with a brief note. I hope you find the happiness David would have wanted for you. Wasn't forgiveness exactly, wasn't acceptance of Ryan or the timeline or the way Emma had chosen to move forward, but it was acknowledgement. It was something. The reception was loud and joyful, Macy dancing with anyone who would dance with her, Emma laughing as Tom told embarrassing stories about Ryan's childhood. Ryan watching his new wife with wonder that this was actually his life now. Later, after the guests had gone home and Macy was asleep upstairs in Tom's guest room, Ryan and Emma stood in the backyard under strings of lights, swaying to music only they could hear. Thank you, Emma said quietly. For what? For staying. That first night when I asked you to and every night since. For not giving up when it got complicated. For loving me through the mess. You did the same for me. Did I? Yeah. You reminded me what it felt like to be chosen, to be someone's person. I'd forgotten that after Jessica left. Emma pulled back to look at him. "You're my person, Ryan Miller. You and Macy both, my second chance at family." "Not second chance, new chance. Different doesn't mean less." They danced in the quiet backyard, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of before and built something beautiful in the after. The lights glowed warm above them. The September air was soft and perfect. And somewhere in the house, their daughter, because Macy was theirs now legally and completely, slept safe and loved. 2 years later, on a winter evening that felt like an echo of other winter evenings, Ryan came home from grocery shopping to find Emma in the kitchen making cookies. Macy was at the table doing homework, and the house smelled like sugar and cinnamon and home. Emma turned when he walked in, and Ryan saw it immediately in her face. The secret she was holding, the joy she could barely contain. "What?" he asked, setting down grocery bags. Emma glanced at Macy, then back at Ryan. "Can we talk for a minute?" They stepped into the living room, and Emma pulled a small stick from her pocket. The kind of stick with 2 pink lines. Ryan stared at it, his brain taking a moment to process what he was seeing. "You're pregnant, 8 weeks. I wanted to wait until I was sure before I told you." Ryan pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Macy appeared in the doorway, suspicious. "What's going on?" Emma crouched down to Macy's level. "How would you feel about being a big sister?" Macy's eyes went wide. "Really? I'm going to have a baby sister? Or brother, we don't know yet." "I hope it's a sister. Brothers are probably gross." Macy threw her arms around Emma. "This is the best day ever." The baby came in early summer, a boy they named David Ryan Miller, honoring both the past and the present. Emma's parents came to help for the first week, and Margaret sent a card with a check and a note that said simply, "Congratulations." Macy took her big sister responsibilities seriously, helping with bottles and diapers and singing lullabies she made up on the spot. Ryan watched his family, his wife, his daughter, his son, and marveled at how far they'd come from that terrible Sunday when everything changed. Life wasn't perfect. Emma still had hard days when grief ambushed her, when she missed David with an ache that took her breath away. Ryan still worried about money and work and whether he was being a good enough father to 2 kids. Macy still had moments when she asked about her biological mother, and Ryan had to navigate those conversations carefully. But they had each other. They had a home filled with laughter and chaos and love. They had proof that endings could become beginnings, that loss could make space for new life, that sometimes the most broken people built the strongest things. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Emma found Ryan in the nursery late at night, holding their sleeping son and looking out the window at the house across the street where a new family was just moving in. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked quietly, joining him at the window. "I'm thinking about how none of this was supposed to happen, how you weren't supposed to lose David, how I wasn't supposed to fall for my grieving neighbor, how all of this came from tragedy. And I'm thinking that I wouldn't change it, not the grief or the gossip or Margaret's threats or any of it, because it led us here." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. "That's either very wise or very messed up. Probably both." They stood there in the quiet nursery, watching their son sleep, and Ryan thought about beginnings and endings and all the messy, beautiful space in between. Thought about how sometimes kindness in the darkness became love in the light. Thought about how patience and presence could build something stronger than any fairy tale romance. Outside, the new neighbors were unloading boxes in the driveway. Tomorrow, Ryan would probably go over and introduce himself, offer to help carry furniture, be the kind of neighbor someone had needed once upon a time. The kind of neighbor who showed up and stayed and proved that sometimes, against all odds and logic and reasonable timelines, broken people could build extraordinary things together. Emma shifted the baby to her other arm. "Come on, let's go to bed. Macy has soccer in the morning, and someone will be awake crying by 3 a.m. Macy or the baby? Could be either, honestly. They put David in his crib, checked on Macy, who was sleeping with elephant under one arm and a new stuffed giraffe under the other, then went to their room, their shared space, their safe harbor, their beginning that came from someone else's ending. Ryan pulled Emma close, and she settled against him the way she had 100 times before, her breathing evening out almost immediately. He stayed awake a little longer, listening to the sounds of his family sleeping, feeling the weight of blessings he'd done nothing to deserve except show up and stay. In the darkness, he whispered a thank you to the universe, to David for loving Emma enough to want her happy, to Jessica for leaving and making space for this, to himself for having the courage to reach out when it would have been easier to stay distant. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, work deadlines and diaper changes, and the endless negotiations of family life. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. Not the life anyone had planned, but the life they'd built together from pieces of shattered dreams and stubborn hope. And that, Ryan thought as sleep finally claimed him, was more than enough. It was everything.